So welcome to It Starts With Mom Live. At the March Times, we fight for the health of moms and babies every single day. And I'm just so thrilled to be with, I guess, one of my sheroes, one of my idols for a long time, a woman who's a mom, a singer, an actress, an author. I mean, she does it all. And we're so excited to have this conversation today with Kelly Rowland. So Kelly, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
You know, it's really great to be able to have this conversation that a lot of moms are already having with each other and their friends, especially working moms who've been trying so much and so hard to
Mhm.
deal with the challenges of the pandemic, trying to work and trying to balance home and virtual learning and still keep it all going. And it's been really, really challenging for a lot of us. Don't you think, Kelly?
Absolutely. I think that, between COVID coming and us all going through that and then figuring it out along the way. And now we're in this space again to where we are out and everybody's going back to work. I know all you moms out there going back to work, and it's just like, oh my goodness, this is crazy, and trying to figure it out and juggle it all. I think that we are extraordinary because I feel like we learn how to do it every day.
Yeah.
People always ask women that, well, how do you do it? And it's because we're so great at being moms and we try to figure it out as much and as possible as we can. But we also try to do it with grace.
Yeah.
We try to do it with love above anything, and we try to lead with love and grace. And we're smart and we figure it out as we're going. And I think that that's what makes us so extraordinary, as my mother would say. She says that's what makes women extraordinary, is that we're capable to figure it all out at the snap of your fingers. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I agree with you on everything. I mean, women are amazing and moms are amazing. And, we have to balance a lot of things, even without asking for help all the time.
Yeah.
We're shouldering a lot of stress and responsibilities and just trying to power through. And while that's all great, it does come at a cost. In fact, one of the things that we've seen through the pandemic, especially with maternal mental health, is that we've seen an extraordinary jump in the number of women who have been able to say that they're having mental health challenges. And thank goodness we're getting hopefully to a better place where we can be talking about mental health in ways that are more helpful to women, where we don't stigmatize that as much as it has been in our past.
Mhm.
And that for all of us, even if you're not a mom, we all have experienced big challenges through this pandemic, but it's especially true for moms. And so that's why it's so important at the March of Dimes that we make sure that moms have all these resources available, both
Yeah.
to sort of help with their physical health and their mental health. Because to your point, it is a balance and it's a journey, and we're not always going to get it right. But we
Yeah.
also don't all need to feel alone in that journey, and we need a
No.
lot of help from each other and from wherever we can get that help, right?
Absolutely. I heard a friend of mine say a couple of weeks ago, she was inside a grocery store and she felt this mom. She had her two kids with her, and one kid wanted to go back to the car and the other kid was trying to like go to the toy section.
Right.
And she said, I kind of followed her. She was like, I didn't want to be creepy, but I kind of followed her to see if she would need help. She said, so she kind of trailed her around the store and she was, of course, stayed back. She said, but it was a moment where I felt like she was having a moment and her cup was full. She said, and I walked right over and she said she just started talking to one of the kids. And one of the kids just stayed right there and she just looked at the woman and she said the woman's eyes filled with tears. It was almost like she just came through at the right time. I think that what we have to remember as moms is we all need help, like just like you said, but also to give ourselves grace. I think even like when I was I just had Titan, and I think I was a year and a half in, and I wanted to do everything perfect. And I was so happy. The same girlfriend looked at me, she goes, you're gonna mess up, right? I was like, dang, like, why would you say that? She was like, because I just want you to understand, like, you're not going to get everything right. And that's okay, because that's a part of making mistakes. Like, I mean, that's a part of getting better as a mom. Is
Yes.
like you learn as you go, and you have to give yourself grace.
Yeah.
And that kind of like expectation that you put on yourself, you don't realize that you could be doing that to your kid later too. So
Right.
you just want to like give yourself time to just like, okay, this is duly noted. I will just make sure I do this instead of this. This works in my time, or this works at my pace. Everything has to be able to play in your court. You know what I mean? And I think like when you know you can venture out and like do more things, or I think that it's important to just know where you are mentally. Everything is just, it's important for you. No one's going to look out for you like you.
That's exactly right. And, I think that's one of the reasons we put together this whole effort around It Starts with Mom, is because we know that moms are really resourceful, right? Always looking for answers to questions that come up. And we wanted It Starts with Mom to be that place where certainly you can ask your mom, you can ask a friend, you can ask an aunt, you can ask others to get for advice, and how'd you deal with this, and what happens when what do you do when this happens, But it's also nice that if you to have a sort of trusted place you can go, and that's what the March of Dimes has tried to do with It Starts with Mom. We hope it's a real resource for women and for moms, because especially as a first time mom, like you were when you first had Titan. He's 6 years old now. I understand, but I mean, probably even now you're still incorporating new ideas into
Yes.
motherhood, and
Yes.
looking for answers to things. And I'm sure there were some first time things that you experienced that you probably would love to share with moms based on your own
Mhm.
experience.
Absolutely. I mean, the first time I took him out, the first time, he was having a tantrum, and I was like, well, what do I do? Because I want to allow him the space for emotions, but I don't want him to think that this is okay. And it's trying to balance all of that at the same time, and also holding my boundaries. It's a lot to think about when these things are happening. It's trial and error. That's the
Yeah,
truth, is that
yeah,
it's trial and error. Like, but we're figuring it out, and you just try to see what works and what doesn't. Because what's interesting now is a mom of two, and because there's a 6-year difference between Titan and Noah, it's being a mom. I'm a newly birthed mom of two. You know what I mean? So it's like someone said, every time you have a baby, you're a new mom. I was like, well, what do you mean? It's like, well, now you're a mom of two. And then when you have another one, well, now you're a mom of three, and so forth and so forth. So
yes,
it's figuring all of that out. And with all of that is balance. With all of that is trying to figure out where your you time is. Because I am very, very keen on self-care.
absolutely.
Very keen. And I think that when you have a really great support system around you, you're able to have your girlfriends help you out. You help them out too when you
Yeah.
need that self-care time. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Or
absolutely.
it's necessary, because
Right.
then you can pour back into yourself. Because someone told me a long time ago, no one will pour into you best except for you.
Yeah.
Only you know what you need.
Yeah. And when you don't have anything left to give, then
It's
nobody
going to
benefits from
benefit.
that. The whole house does better when mom is doing
It's
great.
happy. That's a fact.
And when mom isn't doing great, nothing is going well. So
It's
that's
true.
absolutely true.
It's
It's so
true.
true.
It's true.
We're looking forward to your fireside chat, your keynote with TV journalist and podcast host Kanika Chada Gupta. It's going to be so amazing. We love that you are going to be talking about your motherhood journey and all the things that you've experienced, how you create space for your work and your family, and how you are giving back to fellow moms in the community. And today is going to be a celebration of that. So we're so excited about that.
Thank you. I'm excited about it too. You have no idea. No idea.
So I think the best thing to do is to let us all proceed, and it starts with mom.
Absolutely. It starts with mom.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kanika Chadda Gupta. I am a television journalist, podcast host of That's Total Mom Sense, wife, and mom of three. I am having a fangirl moment right now because I am with the beautiful, talented singer songwriter, actress, and author who has grown up right alongside us. She's been singing her whole life, and began her musical career as a founding member of Destiny's Child. And here we are with children of our own. Please allow me to say her name, Kelly Rowland.
Hey, that's a heck of an intro.
Thank you. I'm so
Wow.
happy to be here with you.
Thank you. So happy to be here with you too. You said mom of three. I was like, salute. Like, oh my goodness.
Yes, yes. No, I feel like, moms, we can do it all. We really can do it all. And our hearts are full. We have a full house. So
Yes.
great.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We can do it all. I feel like every day I'm learning how to do it all.
Yeah.
But it's definitely day by day.
Yes. Yes. And I want you to know, Kelly, that, you have fans around the world, but your OG fans are moms because we just understand you on a completely different level now.
P.S. I feel like since we've all grown up together, there's a different way in which we approach motherhood. We try
Yes.
to do it in a very honest and authentic way. And I love watching that. I really, really love watching that. Because I remember when I first had Titan, there was, I had this seatbelt on the wrong way. I'm learning. I didn't know. And
Yeah.
someone wrote on my Instagram and they were like, what kind of mother are you? And it was like that kind of like that thing and that
Right.
behavior that I felt like
Judgment.
not cool because we're learning how to do this thing. I mean, it's a way to, by the way, they were right. But that's not the point. It's the way we communicate to each other. It should always be with grace and it should always be with humility. Cause I've never, or as my mother would say, I ain't never heard of the perfect mama.
Yeah.
We're all figuring it out as we go. So when I saw this whole kind of movement of a lot of that, like not necessarily accusatory, but it's just the judgmental side, like that judgmental mom situation that was happening. I'm like, get that out of here. Which
Yes.
probably means when you really think about it and start to break it down, it's like, oh, they're self-critical. You know what I mean? So I'm just thinking that they should probably give themselves grace because,
Yeah.
they're expecting everyone else to be perfect. But I'm not perfect. I don't get it right all the time.
No.
I try as
Yeah.
much as I can, but yeah.
As we all know, kids can rock a marriage, and so can a pandemic. And I feel like it takes so much love and compromise and sacrifice and devotion to one another and the family. So, what are some of the things that you and Tim learned through these challenging times, and how has that made both of you stronger?
Communication, self-time.
That's a big one.
Yeah, communication, self-time is like really important. Like, sometimes, like, during the pandemic specifically for us, because we're always traveling. We love being around each other, but also allowing each other like space to just is good too, and not taking it personal. But I think that for us, a lot of it is communication and fun times. Like we went to a New Edition concert 2 weeks ago, and we were dancing like we were like in our teens all over again, and enjoying each other's company and just laughing and smiling. And I was like, that is my best friend. Like we have a really good time together. You know what I mean? But it's important to have those moments all the time. Like a girlfriend of mine said, you should be out on a date night every week. I was like, true. But sometimes we'll be like, oh, well, I'm like, no, we're going to eat. Me and you are going to eat. So, or
just that connection
something
going,
exactly.
Of course.
It's important.
Yeah, it really is. I think that's such great advice to stay connected in a partnership like that. What has your experience been as a working mom?
A learning one, a learning experience because I feel like when I first started to get back out on the road after I had Titan, he was like a couple months old. Every time I got in that car, I was in tears. Every time I got in
Oh,
the car.
oh my God.
So working also allows me space to do the things that I love too. You know what I mean? But here I am with these two little balls of love, and I miss them when I'm away, and they're an extension of me. So that makes it hard, especially now that I have two. It makes it hard. Um, and they don't really talk on the phone as much as I would like them to. They're kids, so they're like,
Right.
no, I was having fun and you're now distracting that. I need you to get off the phone. So
Yes,
that's
yes.
how they are when I'm away. I'm like, well, I think the best part we have is like reading together at night. um and it's awesome. So I being a working mom is a lot of sacrifice.
Mhm.
It's also incredible because our kids get to see us fulfill our dreams and do the things that we love, and they get to see hard work. You know what I
Yes.
mean? They get to see that, like I asked Titan one day, he was like, do you have to go to work? I said, baby, this is like hurting me even more than it's hurting you. I was like, but I completely hear you. I tell him when I'm coming back. I tell him when I'm going to call him and everything. I said, but can I tell you one thing? He says, yes, mommy. I said, do you like going on vacation? He says, yes, because that's one of the things he loves. I had to start there. He's like,
Right,
yes. So I said, do you like this house? Yes. Do you like, I said, go open that refrigerator. He went to open the refrigerator. I said, it's full of food. He said, yes. I said, go to your closet. He goes to his closet. I was like, you have shoes, you have clothes. I said, go cut the water on. He cut the water on. I was like, it works. I said, it's
yeah,
nice. It's clear. It's great, right? He's like, yes. I said, that's what mommy and daddy work hard for. Those simple
yes,
things. I was like,
yes.
I literally just want you to feel comfortable in your space. I want to make sure you have all the necessities. That's it. So he gets it. I haven't had
Mhm.
not one back and forth since that time.
Right. He's ready for the next vacation. He's like, I'm not gonna complain about
He's
it
like, I'm
anymore.
not saying nothing.
No, no, no. Yeah, and I love how you broke it down like that because I think kids just need some semblance of like how to put it all together and
Mhm.
understand that, we're not trying to be away from them um, for that reason. We're providing, and that's another way that we're showing our love and our care. So
Mhm.
I think they definitely get that. And is that how you would kind of tackle the buzzword mom guilt? Do you feel that, or do you check yourself because you know you're doing the right thing?
Yeah, I check myself too. But when he cries when I leave,
Mm,
that's hard. I mean, you try.
mm,
You like I said, you figure it out as you go with like being a
yes,
working mom, and it's yeah. They're not gonna be happy every time, and you're not gonna be happy every time, and you have to make peace with that.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I want to shift gears and talk about March of Dimes.
Mhm.
They have a 90-year legacy, and their ongoing work to improve maternal and infant health is more important than ever. And our nation is in the midst of a maternal and infant health crisis.
Mhm.
Um, the rates of preterm birth are increasing. The US is one of the most dangerous places to give birth in the developed world. And there are unacceptable disparities in birth outcomes between women and infants of color and their white peers. And I
Mhm.
want to go through some statistics to share with you and all those listening. So each year, about 700 women die from complications related to pregnancy. And for every maternal death, another 70 women suffer life threatening health challenges. And that's over 50,000 women a year. Every 12 hours, a woman dies due to pregnancy related complications. And Black women are 27% more likely to
Mhm.
experience severe pregnancy complications. And the rates of death of those who are over the age of 30 are 4 to 5 times greater than white women.
Mhm.
So these statistics are heartbreaking,
Yes.
and you've been involved with March of Dimes for many years, and we're in the midst of this, a mother of a movement to fundraise, educate, advocate for moms, especially those who speak up for themselves. So, what are some of the initiatives that are close to your heart when it comes to March of Dimes?
Oh my goodness. This one right now specifically being a big one.
Yeah.
I think for me, because I think about a specific story that someone actually told me. It was someone that I'm not exactly close to, but it's still too close. Where there was a mom who went in and she knew something was wrong, and the doctors and nurse actually ignored her, and she ended up passing. And what was left, of course, is her husband and her baby on this earth without her. Now, what I know of this person is that their spirit was incredible. They were so excited to become a mother. So to have this exciting moment of your life and then your life is taken away from you is not fair. And I know for Black women, it's usually, oh, well, they're strong enough, or they're just crying about, why are they crying about it? Well, no, no question should be overlooked. If
Yeah.
there's anything that a mother, a new mother is feeling, it should not go astray. The thought, the feeling, the question, anything about it should never go astray. It should not go unnoticed or not untreated. It's wrong. I'm just gonna call a spade a spade. It's wrong. And I think that when that happens, who's the one responsible? No one ever wants to point the blame or say who's responsible for it. But the truth is the truth. And it's like, that part of it is just heartbreaking. So I say, pay attention to every single last one of your patients, every mother. She's a new mother. It doesn't matter if you think the question is the most ridiculous question. And it would be ridiculous if you thought the question was ridiculous, because
Yes.
it's just one seeking knowledge. That's it.
Right.
So if you're asking questions, have people around this ward specifically who care about every single detail there is about being with these mothers. You know what I mean? And making them feel comfortable to this new space that they already have to figure out on their own.
Exactly.
But I say just lead with love. And that's what March of Dimes does. They lead with love every single time. It's always about the mother. It's always about the care of the mother. It's always about the best of the baby. And that's literally all you care about.
Yeah.
And I feel like people should take notice to March of Dimes and the way they do it, the way they care. It's at a different space, and it's very human. It's so human.
Yes.
And that's what I love the most about March of Dimes.
Absolutely. And it's something that we all have to be involved in and give back to, especially as fellow moms.
Yes.
And you mentioned this before, but it takes having this rock solid support system, and those in your corner. So who's in your mom tribe?
My mom tribe is my Mama T, my BB, BB, CC, all my girlfriends really. We swap stories, like all of my girlfriends. We figure it out. If there's something I feel like I'm not quite grasping, I always call and ask about it, especially like when I have a girlfriend who has two boys exactly. But hers are 3 years apart. They're 3 years apart. Sorry, 4 years apart. So I call her a lot.
Yes.
Yes, because I'm like, this is strange. He just tripped his brother. Is he supposed to hit him in the face? What do I do? I don't want to tell him to leave him alone for the 5th time. Like, it's just, you know what I mean? You're just figuring it out. But your tribe is everything.
Oh, yes.
They're
Absolutely.
everything. I'm so grateful.
Yes. I feel like we, have WhatsApp threads that we're just messaging, is this okay? Is this okay? And I feel like, especially when you're a first time mom, you're so impressionable, and it's your mom friends that are like, you need this, you don't need this, don't waste on this,
Yes.
And they just give it to you straight, and you feel like, thank you. Like I'm not going into this all alone,
Yes.
You have people who have your back. It just makes a world of a difference.
And I have friends who are like, well, yeah, I mean, I didn't do this, but you can try. And
Right.
they know good and well I'm gonna call them back in about a month and be like, why did you tell me to do that? Like you were supposed to have no. She's like, some things I just let you do because you have to experience that. That's just a part of it. I was like, you're my one.
It's so true. It's so true.
Yeah.
And that brings me to mom sense. It's just this term that I've coined that I feel like we all have this built-in sixth sense. We have our intuition, and it's our superpower. And dads have their dad sense. Grandma has grandma sense. It's everybody has it. But for moms in this case, it's so attuned. So tell us an occasion where you trusted that mom sense of yours, and it just steered you on the right path.
A month ago.
Okay.
And I think it's mom sense, but it's also your ancestors helping you along the way. Because I felt like this was my mom. It was 2 or 3 something in the morning, and I caught a chill, and it was all I heard was Noah. And I got up and I was like, it's cold. And then I'm walking, and it's like I picked up the pace. I don't usually, it's picked up the pace. I got in Noah's room, it was freezing. And I was like, oh my God. And of course we covered him with the little, full onesies. It was fleece, but his little nose was so cold. And so the way the air is in the house is just so weird, because where we were and where he is, it's like a little bit cooler down that way. So I was like, okay, cool. Switched the air, of course, made it warmer, and he was fine. But I was like, thanks, Mama. And I went right back to sleep.
I mean, you have such an angelic voice. We all know that, grew up with it. Is there anything that you find special to sing to your babies?
Noah calms down when I sing, surprisingly, because he is on 10 all the time. If he's hollering, that's the only time I can get him to just kind of woosah. Titan was not like that. Noah just smiles and he just looks at me, and then he wants to pull my face forward, which I love. So, I sing. What do I sing to him? Anything. The wheels on the bus go round and round to the Itsy Bitsy Spider. He loves all the little fun, songs. So I just sing those to him, and he's content.
I love that. But he's so lucky to hear it sung, so beautifully.
You're very sweet. Thank you.
Like, we have parents tone deaf, whatever. It's not going to be.
By the way, if they sing Bruno one more time, though.
Oh my gosh, yes. It's all day Encanto in this house too.
Yes, this house is all about Encanto. As soon as he hears the the family, mother God, like he goes nuts, and he's just there like this. That's a good time that you can catch Noah sitting still, because any other time you didn't see, but he's just literally running around in the backyard right now, just back and forth. And trying to keep up with him is hard. He is moving.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Kelly, what are you most excited about this year?
This year, I'm beyond excited about releasing my first children's book. I actually did it with another fellow mom. Our kids met at school, and they literally became like freaking frat. They both love basketball. Chase is his name, and her name, of course, is Jessica McKay. And so she started, we actually started like swapping different mom stories of just being away from home and having kids and what that was like. And she said she had an idea for a children's book. I was like, well, let's do it together. So it's exactly what we did. And just the process of making it, and having Fannie Lim as the illustrator, just all of it was incredible. And I just feel like it's a story that a lot of moms will be able to relate to. It's also like the first book, children's book, where you actually see an adult on a page, like by themselves, you know, because the story is about, of course, between a mother and a son. So we experience all these emotions, and I think that as far as working moms are concerned, and everybody thinks that the kid is the only one experiencing emotions, and the parents do too. We miss our kids when we're at work. We miss our kids when we're traveling, and the dynamic is just really a real one, you know. And we had a wonderful time, and I'm so excited about it. Always with you, always with me is what it's called, and I'm delighted, like beyond delighted right now.
Oh, we're so excited for you. That's on all of our gift list for Mother's Day is always with you, always with me. That's just so, so sweet. Thank you, Kelly. This
Thank
was
you.
really, really just an amazing chat. I feel like we have so much to learn from you and to celebrate with you. And you're always with us too, and we're with you
Thank
too.
you. Thank you. Well, I'm just grateful that as a community, it was really dope speaking to you because I learned a lot too. And I think that as mothers, we have to always make sure our space is always like this with each other, like it's open to each other, so that we fall into it. We are open to, you know, to our mistakes, open to our greatness, open to other, you know, women, and, you know, imparting their wisdom. I think you have to always stay open. So thank you for your insight and your wisdom as well, and sharing your story as well. And to all of you who are watching this, thank you so much.
Hi, Diamond Well here, your healthy lifestyle expert. Honored to be here today to talk about some health and wellness tips, things to really help us not only physiologically, but also spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. Whole life well-being. Now, right now, I'd like to share with you something that's super simple, very accessible to every single one of us. Breathing. You know, it's one of those things I think we take for granted, but we've actually noticed that our breathing changes depending on our emotional state. Think about it. Have you ever found yourself scared during a scary movie? Your heart rate probably went up, right? Those fight and flight mechanisms are very real responses. But here's the thing. A lot of us find ourselves in heightened states of stress all the time, and we don't have enough recovery time. And so this chronic stress has a really negative impact on our health and our well-being, especially our mental health. So I know that when it comes to meditation and breath work, there is 1,000,001 different techniques out there. Today I'm going to share one with you. But please note, go out, try a bunch of different ones. There's so many cool apps out there. One of our favorites, my family's favorite, we've been using for years, is Insight Timer. Absolutely free, user-generated content. People around the world that teach or are just really into this contribute content that the rest of us have access to. So don't use that as a barrier. Find something that works for you. Maybe guided meditation, walking meditation, musical meditation, whatever it is for you, find one. Because all it takes is 5 minutes a day. That's it. So today I'm going to share one that's easy to remember, but also easy to do. It's something that my family and I started doing many, many years ago when we first wanted to introduce meditation, especially to our kids. It's called the square breathing technique. So I want you to envision a square, all right? So in your mind's eye, you're going to picture a nice, beautiful square. We're going to start in one of those corners. And what I want to invite you to do right now, close your eyes. No peeking. Close your eyes, all right? We're going to just get a nice seated position. Feet flat on the floor. I want you to be grounded. I want you to be present for this. Proud chest, but relaxed. You can put your hands on your thighs if you like, or you put them at your side. I like mine on my thighs. I find it more comfortable. You're going to close your eyes. We're going to start with an inhale through the nose for 4 seconds. We're then going to hold for 4 seconds. Then we're going to exhale for 4. And while we're exhaling, we're envisioning ourselves drawing from one corner to the next. Then we're going to hold for another 4. That completes the one side. Then again, we start the process again. Inhale for 4, hold for 4. And don't worry, I'm going to guide you through this. I just want you to follow along. Ready to get started? Let's do it. All right, get in your position. Ready? Remember, no peeking. Close your eyes. Okay. We're going to start just a nice out breath. Empty your lungs. Inhaling for 4 through our nose. Hold for 4. Exhale for 4. Hold for 4. Inhaling through our nose for 4. Hold for 4. Exhale for 4. Hold for 4. Inhale through our nose for 4. Hold for 4. Exhale for 4. Hold for 4. Inhale through the nose for 4. Hold for 4. Exhale for 4. Hold for 4. Open your eyes. How you feel? A bit more relaxed? Maybe just a little bit? I would encourage you to repeat that 3-4 rounds of it in total. At any time when you're feeling a little stressed or you just need a little quiet moment. And so as that, thank you for the moment. Thanks for the attention and the time. Thank you for playing along. Look forward to seeing you in a couple more sessions. We're going to be talking a bit about nutrition and going to be talking about chair yoga. So with that, I'll say adieu and I'll see you in a bit.
Hello, everyone. I am so delighted you all are here for this conversation. I'm Christine Coe. I'm an author, podcaster, and mother of 2, and I'm here with 2 incredible guests. First, I have Latham Thomas, founder of Mama Glow and the Mama Glow Foundation. She's also an author of Own Your Glow and part of Oprah's Super Soul 100. Welcome, Latham. So happy to have you here. We're also here with the wonderful Dr. Cheryl Ziegler, who is the best-selling author of Mommy Burnout, the host of Dr. Cheryl's Pod Couch, and a regular national and local news contributor. She's a therapist who holds a doctorate in psychology and is a licensed professional counselor in the state of Colorado. Welcome, Cheryl. Should I call you Cheryl, or should I call you Dr. Cheryl, Dr. Ziegler, preference?
You can call me whatever you're comfortable calling me.
All right, cool. Well, we have a really important conversation today. We're going to talk about how to manage motherhood and put ourselves first in this post-pandemic world, because I think, as all of us can agree, we've all done a lot of holding other people and putting other people first. So I have a lot of questions for you both, and I'm going to dive right in with the same question for both of you. How are new moms doing? I've been thinking a lot about this question, especially for moms who had babies during the pandemic the last 2 years. It's been a lot. And I'm just curious about, you 2 both have very unique lenses, and I'm curious about what you are seeing as the greatest challenges for this particular group of moms right now. Cheryl, do you want to start?
Sure. So I would say that moms right now are just starting to come out of a period of time where it was probably pretty lonely, much more isolated than early motherhood already can be. And so it's this period of time where it's like, I want to meet new moms. I want to talk to other parents. I want to know what other people are doing. So I think that natural exchange and playtime and learning together, they've really been excluded from. They haven't had those opportunities. Even new moms who may have toddlers, they didn't have those opportunities to meet other parents at drop-offs and pickups and things like that. So I think right now where we're at is that they're coming out and they want to connect.
How about you, Lathan? What are you seeing from moms, pandemic moms?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting that we have lived through a time in the zeitgeist where there's a marked difference in how a particular group of people experience the perinatal continuum. Because everybody globally had a similar experience, right? Like Dr. Ziegler said, that was extremely isolating. The things that make us human, like connection, touch, being in proximity, having meals together, doing the things that we do socially. Coming out of this, I think there's like an awkwardness in how people, like, they don't know what feels comfortable, what's okay to do, what's not okay to do. And a lot of people, I think, have anxiety about being around people, and then a heightened anxiety around in the environment. Are my children safe? Would I be safe? Am I making myself more exposed, to potential pathogens? I think there's so much really like angst for people coming out of this period, which is, I mean, it's unprecedented what we just lived through. And I think it's important, as we're supporting people, to really understand that you just survived a global pandemic. Like everything you're doing is enough, And so this idea of like pushing ourselves and trying to do all the things coming outside, I think it's important just to recall and remember and keep to the front of our minds that we just survived something unprecedented. It's hugely impactful on all of us and as a society. And that for us as mothers or caregivers, like, this is a time that we need to like really move slowly, be gentle with ourselves as we kind of come out on the other side.
Absolutely. And I think we should put, everything you're doing is enough on a t-shirt or something, a mug, anything. I have a follow-up for you both, because something, as you were both talking, and I was thinking about how extraordinarily difficult this time was, I also feel like it was a time where people kind of surprised themselves, or they discover new things. And certainly I wrote an article about how adults were finding new friendships during the pandemic for CNN a little while ago. And I was struck by one. There was a new mom, like a mom who had had a baby during the pandemic. And she said that she found this kind of new and unexpected level of bravery, going up and just sort of reaching out and saying hi to other new moms on social media, because that's all there was. So I'm curious, sorry, long run up, but I'm curious if either of you heard from either clients, or on social or whatever, examples of kind of moments of joy and connection, for moms who had babies during the pandemic.
I've heard of a lot of different types of ways that people have been innovative with it. Particularly, I would say in the fertility continuum, because many people had to forego fertility cycles, which was so devastating if you had like a plan in place and then that got interrupted, and then there was so much uncertainty around like when that would start back up for many people, and depending on their state. And so what we saw a lot of was like these self guided and self facilitated groups of people, like convening mostly online, but sometimes in person. And they would do it in pods. And so because a lot of people were just feeling, so much devastation around not being able to continue this path forward, they were finding other people who were also going through similar situations, but also figuring out what solutions they could come up with together and what information. So there was a lot of information and knowledge sharing. And then also like a safety net of just a community of people going through the same thing together. I thought that was really beautiful. And it was peer led. So it wasn't like they engaged providers necessarily. They kind of just did it to support each other, which is really cool. I think a lot of people also connected through some of their care providers. So what we saw a lot was, people who had particular life experiences that were surfacing, or challenges where we saw, oh, this other person went through the same thing, connecting people that way. And so it was like kind of this peer-to-peer support that would happen as a result of a doula connecting someone with like their other client. So I feel like things like that were happening much more, and also like through the virtual lens. So people were doing texting, they were doing the WhatsApp groups, and doing things like, "Hey, how you doing today? What's your high today?" Right? What's a low today? What do you need support with? And they were just doing this amongst themselves because nobody really understood what they were going through. And I think that when you're in the space of being a practitioner or a clinical provider, right? Like there's only so much that you can do to support people, because when they come to see you and then outside you can give recommendations, but what do they do? How do they design their life around those recommendations, and what do the supports look like that they can create for themselves? So I think there was a lot of ingenuity around
Mhm.
staying connected.
Yeah, for sure. Cheryl, how about you? What did you see?
Yeah. So I think in the lens that I experienced the pandemic, with my patients, what I saw were women becoming entrepreneurs, really saying, either I have to leave this workforce or I always wanted to do this. And they did it during this time. And that was unbelievable. So when we talk about innovation and creation, I think that there were a lot of women in particular that were moved to really start what they had always dreamed of or what they were scared to do before, and it just felt like, hey, what's there to lose? I'm going to go all in on this. I'm home. I've got more of this concentrated time. So there was that period of time that maybe, it's easy to forget now, but we shouldn't forget, where it was more like the, beginning to middle of 2020, where people were home, but they were getting creative. They were finding their sense of humor. They were really just, I think, dreaming bigger and maybe feeling like, we don't know what the world is going to bring to us, but I know what I want to do in it. And so that's really what I saw. Lots of creativity, ingenuity, and entrepreneurship, which was really exciting.
I love that. Oh, that just energizes me, actually. That's wonderful. Well, as people find new talents and new things to do, this actually leads me to my next question, which is changes course just a smidge. You both do a lot of things. I can relate to that. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. So I want to talk a little bit about multitasking and mindfulness, because there are the people who say, oh, yes, you can multitask and do all these things. And then the people that say multitasking is terrible for you, etc. So we know that we should be paying attention and being mindful in our lives, but obviously it's hard. We have so many different demands. If you had to recommend a really simple, actionable way for moms to maintain mindfulness in the midst of all these many things to do, what would it be?
This is something that comes up a lot. So the first thing I say, and I wrote about also in Mommy Burnout, was become an awesome monotasker. So just because we can multitask, I found myself actually using that word yesterday, and I can actually say like, wow, I haven't heard myself say that, but I needed to multitask. So I can do it, but it doesn't mean that I want to do it, that it's good for anybody for me to do it. So it's like a tool in my back pocket. Sure, if I need to multitask, I could do that, but it's not the way I want to navigate the world. And it's, if I had one thing to say, I would say, in order to keep your presence and stay with your mindfulness and not feel a need to multitask, really put the phone down. I think it's phones that are very distracting to parents. So they'll be, again, I get it because it's a little bit of an escape, but if you are feeding your child or pushing them on a swing, even taking a walk, and they're in the stroller, I think those are opportunities where moms feel like, oh, good, well, now I could just like scroll or I can, escape a little bit. But I actually think those are opportunities to be present. Those are opportunities to be really focused, because that's where attachment and bonding happens. When you're talking about the birds and the trees that you're seeing and the airplane that flew by, and oh, how high are we going on the swing? Those are really those opportunities for bonding. And I understand that for some moms, it also feels like a time to like, oh, they get a little bit of a break. Like, oh, I can, the image of a mom sort of pushing a baby in a swing and then having a phone right here. But really what I would say is don't take that opportunity to get your scrolling or your, social media stuff done. Really just to be really present in those moments. They're precious and they contribute to attachment and bonding.
Mm. Yeah, and I would also add, as somebody who works on the computer like all day long, that those moments when you can be out there connecting and then also extending your gaze, like very, very, very useful and very good for your health. Lathan, your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, I love we're so on the same page because I actually call it unitasking and wrote about it in my book On Your Glow. So we like have that same theme going. Yeah, I agree. I mean, phone fasting is critical. Like actually scrolling your phone is actually a cognitive event. It's an activity that engages your brain fully. So it's actually not a break. So the idea that like just doing this is like it's not a break. It actually engages your brain in so many ways that you probably don't want to and that you don't realize and takes up more energy. So if we can think about the slowing down, right? And I always think about like the simplicity of like washing the dishes, and I just do that. Or if I'm going to write an email, I'm writing one email. Or if I'm cooking, I'm not like cooking and then also trying to talk on the phone and also trying to like like we yeah, just like Dr. Ziegler said, you can do it all, but you shouldn't, so think about like how to design your life in ways where you can delegate. And this happens during pregnancy, right? Like this is a time where we start to notice the shifts in our body and in our consciousness, and where we actually need to ask for help. And then sometimes we do need somebody to like tie our shoes because our belly is big now, or we need somebody to run to get that sandwich that we're craving, because we don't feel like walking or whatever it would be, right? um and so we get to practice asking for support during pregnancy so that when our babies arrive and we do need an extra set of hands or a community around us, like it doesn't feel foreign, and we also have people that we can rely upon for that. And so and also if we have support around us, then we can have time to step away and have moments of self-care, right? And I don't just mean like, taking a bubble bath, because you can't bubble bath your problems away. But I do mean like having some time that is devoted to just like yourself, right? And that can be on a moment to moment basis. That could be like, oof, I feel a little bit tired now. Let me just go lay down and take a nap. Right. Oh, I was on the computer a lot today. Let me go take a walk. Right. It is just checking in. Right. And just saying, like, right now, I need to go do something, not like on Sunday from 2 to 4, I'm going to do this thing for myself. But every day I show up to the office of help and I give myself like, what I need to kind of continue to stay in optimal health. And it's really hard to do this when we're not practicing, right? And also when we don't have supports around us. And that's what we see a lot for folks who have been living through the pandemic. They don't have those supports in place and didn't get to practice all those skill sets during pregnancy because they were isolated.
Right, right. It's interesting because as I hear you talk, I think about all of those moments during the day as these little micro transitions, right? Where we're going from this thing, we're going to the next thing. Latham, I wanted to ask you about the sort of bigger picture transitions around motherhood. I'm sure you both can, but I can remember, for example, the runway preparing for pregnancy and being pregnant right after my kid was born, what it meant to go back to work. I mean, we were talking about micro transitions, and now these are the big ones, right?
Mhm.
So, I imagine some of the things you've been talking about apply, but I'd be curious about what you recommend for some ways that moms who are navigating these just really overwhelming transitions, how they can put their health and their nutrition and their wellness first when so much else is going on.
Yeah. So it becomes not a question of like, like how do I figure out how to do this, and am I worthy of this? But it becomes a matter of this is the path forward, right? Like for me to succeed as a parent, as a human, through this postnatal experience, I have to be well, right, to fully recover from the demands of pregnancy and birth, and then the acute postpartum period into latent postpartum and delayed postpartum. Like we need support, we need rest, we need retreat, we need silence, we need engagement, we need all these different things, right? But I think that the the work that we do as doulas, when we come in to support people and help them think about the design, I think about it from this lens, right? Like, how do you design a life that you don't have to escape? Right? Because if we think about, like Dr. Ziegler was talking about, if you're on your phone, right, you're going someplace else, right? And yes, we all do it, right? We're engaged in this world that's, technical and on our phones and like living seamlessly between apps. And there's a whole life happening around us and also inside of us, right? And so people are like attuned to what's happening in their bodies, right? Learning to listen to what's happening in their bodies, learning to use that as information to be able to share with their provider. Information that also, by the way, in many cases could be signaling health. It could be signaling a health concern, right? And so part of that has to be that we developed a really strong acute sense of being able to listen. That has to happen early, right? And so, and we were thrust into that through pregnancy, right? You're like, what is this feeling? What is this sensation? What is that? Like, what is this aversion? Like, all of these things are ways of our body allowing us and teaching us, like, sort of how to tap in. And so, and how to listen. And so I think the first piece of that is like learning to listen to your body and its unique needs, right? And so how does your body signal to you that you're tired? How does your body signal to you that you're full? How does your body signal to you that you're dehydrated? Like, what are the senses? Like, what comes through your body? And listen, and then also act on that learning, right? So hydrate, eat when you feel hungry. If you know that you're somebody, like I know myself, if I don't eat right away, my blood sugar will dip. I'm so moody. So I know
Hmm.
I have to carry snacks. I know I have to have like a water bottle in a car ride. I also know that I'm the first person that has to pee when we're on a long drive. So I'm like thinking that through, right? So you have to start to actually anticipate your needs on the journey. And then if you
Yeah.
know you can't meet them on your own, which most of us can't, right? And we're not designed to, then you find providers that are aligned to help you. You find people in community to help you. And I also love the idea of having like a buddy system or like a sister system, right? Where there's somebody who's like maybe your peer or a little bit your elder on the path, right? So maybe they have twins, you're about to have twins, and you can like, sync up in a friendship where you have that support. And then think about also other people who can kind of support you on the other side. Like, are there other folks, like somebody who can cook really well, somebody who's really great at newborn care, maybe someone who's great with somebody who makes you laugh, like have different people who can play roles in your life. So on the other side, you get the quality care you need to thrive, right? Because we know that we don't have in the United States, a system of, I should say, a postpartum culture that supports, birthing individuals. Instead, you look at all the other global cultures; they have an incredible postpartum tradition in place, and in the United States, it's not reflected in any way, even in our policy. Like, it's a huge policy gap that we don't have federal paid leave, and that 1 in 4 women go back to work 10 days after having a baby. So, because of that, we have to design, right?
Hmm.
So that I think it's really just having those supports in place and creating community around it.
Yeah, a lot of agency required there. Cheryl, let's go inward. This is something I think about a lot. I'm curious about what you're seeing from your clients in terms of, we all have these narratives we develop. We all have these voices that tell us we can or cannot do things. And I'm curious about what you're seeing in terms of what gets in the way of moms from taking care of themselves. Like, what are the big barriers, whether they're cognitive or emotional or whatever they might be? And then what would you say are some practical ways that moms could like just smash those barriers?
Yeah. It's a great question, a great topic, because there's a lot that gets in the way of women taking care of themselves, especially new moms. Um, Sometimes it's what's modeled for us, right? So all of a sudden becoming a mother means fully sacrificing yourself, giving up everything that you like, that you love, that you cherish to take care of another human being. So it starts off with that message of, well, yeah, this is what I do now. I have a baby and they come first. And so the notion of putting yourself first or putting on your own oxygen mask, those kinds of messages that women get are kind of contradictory, though, to the real messages that women actually get, which is baby first, maybe family next, your spouse, your husband, your partner, whatever, and you last. That's really what's more supported in actuality. So it starts off, I think, with the messages, maybe the modeling, and then it's a confusing time in which when you're, especially when you're pregnant and you're getting ready to, you have these 9 months to prepare for the baby. It really is all about the baby. Even though you're growing the baby and what you do really matters, there's such an external focus on the baby, and it's new. And even if you are an experienced mom, even if you're having your second or your third child, every baby is different. So it's a humbling experience in which we're really trained to say, and almost wired to be very protective, to be very attuned to our baby and less attuned to our own selves. And that's why, I think during this transitional point, definitely asking for help is really important. I think anticipating your needs is really important. Like, how are you going to be fed? I remember that was a really big thing for me. I would see a very obvious difference in my milk production if I was not hydrated and fed, but there were some times where there really wasn't anything. And grabbing a couple crackers and drinking some water wasn't going to cut it. I needed protein, I needed fat, I needed those things in my diet, but that took some meal prep time. So I think it's really important to rely on other people, to ask for help, to anticipate your other needs, and to listen, and even listen to elders. I think that's something that women these days have really gone away from. They are much more likely to go online and read an article or take even professional advice. And not that any of that is wrong, but there's really is some lived experience and wisdom in mothers and grandmothers and aunts and other people with older children that somehow we've lost the value of. It's like, oh, well, you had kids so long ago. I don't know if you know what it's like now. And it's like, no, they know what it's like. Like, they might not know what the, American Academy of Pediatrics is suggesting today on the first food introduction. That changes every couple of years, but they know the process. They know this beautiful transition, but also this difficult transition. And I just would love to see us getting back to so much more of that, respecting our elders, listening to their stories, incorporating them into our own.
I love that. And I will say, as somebody who is the sixth of seven children, my mom was just, there was no even not taking her advice. You just take Mama Co's advice and that's it.
Great.
So, Latham, I'm curious if you have a really simple and practical piece of advice for this. I feel like there should be like a secret fist bump or a handshake or something for anybody, any mom who's had a baby during the pandemic or is just coming, having one post pandemic. What would you say is like a piece of advice you'd give to a mom in this unique group of moms?
First of all, I love what Dr. Ziegler said about just honoring the wisdom of our ancestors and our elders. It is so critically important. And in that knowledge transfer that comes from being in community is so key. And I think it's cultural because again, in my family too, there is no not listening to the elders. So I think it's a different generation, right? That like is sort of like, oh yeah, whatever, we're gonna do it our way. And it's like there's literally a model for this, and it was put in place by your elders. So I love that you bring that in. And it's something we always lean into also in the doula work, right? Because there's so much information there. And I mean, I think that, you know, I I don't like this idea of like advice because it feels really like prescriptive for people that it may not fit, right? And I feel like what I'd rather kind of help people lean into is lean away from listening to others and like learn how to siphon off that listening of like all of the things that are coming in and be able to hear what's happening inside and
Mhm.
listen to what their intuition is telling them about their parenting, about what their needs are, and move in the direction of that to build the confidence, because I think that part of self confidence, self advocacy, self efficacy, and feeling like you have agency in the world as a new parent is being able to have self-trust, right? And so it's not enough for someone to trust me or to trust us, right? They have to trust themselves. They have to feel like they have the capacity. And so I think capacity building really starts with, um, affirmation. I think it starts with people and community lifting you up and reminding you like every day that you can do it, even when you don't think that you can. I think it starts with tiny victories, like I got outside today with the baby. That's a win, because I remember getting out the house before like 11. I was like, how do people do this? I've changed a diaper now. I got it like, and now there's vomit and what's like, it was constant. And then I finally got outside. I was like, yes, we made it to the yoga class. It's almost the end, but we made it. Right. And now my son's 18 and I look back and then I'm supporting other people and I see my nieces and godchildren and I'm like, yeah, we do this all and we figure it out. And the best way I think to figure it out is to go through it and not alone, right? So it's sort of like how when we have little ones and they're learning how to navigate the world. So they start crawling on stuff and then like, holding on to furniture as they start to toddle. And we don't stop them and like, oh, no, no, no. Like we just let them, right? And so it's like that gentle guidance of having the support there and someone who's looking upon you gingerly and making sure you're safe, but not inputting. Right. And so I think that value is sort of something that we should lean into when we are lovingly sharing advice to people, unless it's asked for. Right? Like, really, what do you think I should do with this? Because I know that you, as my elder, for instance, right? Like taking Dr. Ziegler's approach, like, hey, auntie, what would you do for this? Right? Or like that, then you can open up the floodgates. But if I didn't ask, like, please, like, let me
Yeah.
try to figure it out. Let me try to, like move through the world in a way that I get my bearings. And I think we owe this to parents because there's so much flooding of information everywhere that the thing I see a lot is mistrust, like mistrust in self and like not feeling fully grounded in a process that is, by the way, like biological and intuitive and natural. And we're like moving through it in a way where we feel like we're not even embodied. And so I try to lean away from giving my personal, lens on stuff and more just like, okay, how do we get you in your body around this? How do we get you to feel like, self-guided in this process rather than like me as a guide? I'm just here to kind of be a gentle supporter, right? And a cheerleader,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah, that's so important. I think that inner compass and really trusting it is probably one of the biggest challenges that moms have. And I will also just tag on that I think that especially since we live in the age of social media, that embracing the fact that mistakes are part of the process and that it's not going to be perfect and that if you mess up, it's totally fine. Tomorrow's another day. I think that's just so important, especially right now. Cheryl, I have a question for you. So earlier, Lathan was talking about about systems, our big picture, the system is not really designed for postpartum support. And that is the case for, all kinds of things to support moms. So I'd be curious about your recommendations about, setting up our own systems and some practical ways. And Lathan was addressing this a bit earlier too, but what would you recommend as some practical ways that moms can build systems into their lives to really try to take care of themselves first?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that, support, I think is a theme that people should be hearing by now, right? So having these support systems are important. And one thing that I talk about a lot, and I've learned throughout my journey of being a mother and also just growing into my womanhood, really, is that you have different people in your life for different reasons. And, let's just say I'm sure are women listening right now that no longer have their mothers. And so that doesn't mean that they cannot be nurtured though. So, you have to open yourself up to saying, I know I need nurturance. Where can I get nurturance? And accept it from where it is instead of grieving or longing for something that we don't have. Right. So becoming a parent brings up all that old stuff, right? Did you lose a parent? Do you not have a relationship with one anymore? What about your siblings? Have you recently moved? Are finances tight? Was this baby planned? Like there's so much that goes into it emotionally. So I think, having knowing that there's not a manual, but there are some elements that are really critical to building a healthy and strong foundation, and support is probably top of list. So creating those in advance, pivoting when you need to, learning how to clearly communicate and ask for what you need. So saying to whoever's helping you, whether that's your mother or grandmother, an aunt, a friend, I really appreciate when you did this. That was really helpful. I didn't love it when, you walked in when I was nursing the baby. That's actually something I want to do in private. Like I didn't have the words to say that, but I wish that I would have, because instead I was like crying, right? Because especially when you're trying to nurse or whatever it is in that early stages that's challenging for you, maybe you're trying to soothe them, you're trying to put them down, maybe your baby's colicking. A lot of times people want to come in and they think they're being helpful, and it may not feel that way to us. It may feel judgmental. We may feel more stressed. So I think being able to set up your system, accept who's in your system, recruit who you need for your system, and then communicate really clearly to them on what's helpful, what's not, and maybe just what you don't know. Saying, I don't know, like you want to stay the whole weekend. That might be like exactly what I need. And I also have to say, maybe it won't be. And if I ask for space, I hope that you understand it's just because I'm trying to find my way. So I think if you can practice that, more and more you can do that communication, it would be critically helpful and important, especially in those beginning stages.
Yeah, that's so important. And I think I just want to like put a little underline under the word practice that you just mentioned, because it does. It takes a ton of work. Okay, well, we're running down on our time here together. So I have a final question for both of you. And, let's imagine this. I know we've talked about kind of dispelling the notion of advice. So think about this as a recommendation in community for this community of moms, and assuming that like it's advice that anybody can use. So like it doesn't involve money, it doesn't involve, whatever. What is one thing that you would recommend that all moms listening can do starting today in order to really start building that practice of wellness and self-care, and dare I say self-love?
I'll speak from an experience that I had, which was I expected that the friends that I had going into pregnancy and on were going to be the same coming on the other side. I expected that the friendships wouldn't change. I expected that people would show up in the way that they did in my prior years of friendship with them, and that it would look the same. And what I came to learn was that people who I felt like I counted on disappointed me. And they disappointed me because I actually hadn't put in place a framework for us to move forward from the way that I was prior to pregnancy and the person I was becoming as a mother. And so, what I think is really important as we move into this period that's so powerful, but also really vulnerable, is to decide intentionally who are the people that belong to me, and who's going to be with me on this journey. And so I would do a lot of, inventory, really. Starting today, do that inventory to decide if you're pregnant. Awesome, because you can do that inventory early. If the baby is here and you're really assessing how you're feeling about how folks are showing up, there's probably people who are showing up that you didn't even expect. And you're like, oh my God, now I'm really close to this person who I didn't even depend upon or didn't even expect to show up in this way. And so I think it's really important to kind of design those friendship circles, really decide who can carry you on this journey and who you can depend upon, because on the other side, we need to be swaddled, right? Just like we swaddle babies, we need to be swaddled in support. And so who actually has the capacity to do that? We need to figure out who those people are that we know, and then who do we need to meet or bring in to fill those support gaps, right? And so that's where a doula can be very helpful, prenatal or postpartum. That's where other people like mental health providers, like our massage therapists or lactation consultant, or acupuncturists, all these other people also help to fill roles. But who are those friends? Like, who's changing your pads and stuff when you go to the bathroom for the first couple of times, if it's not your partner or your mama or your auntie, right? Is it a friend that's going to come over and who's, comfortable with you and that you feel comfortable with? And you don't realize, because you think that they're going to be the folks you were always friends with, and many times they're not. And so I want to encourage people who are maybe feeling disconnected, or maybe feeling like the friends that they hoped would be on the journey with you haven't showed up. That there's nothing about you, but you are moving into a new area of your life, and you're crossing a threshold, and some of the people that were on this side can't come with you. And so it is important to ensure that people do come with you. And who are those people? And you can choose them. You can choose them. You can decide.
That's wonderful. And that image of being swaddled as an adult, I'm so into it. It's ridiculous. Cheryl, your thoughts on this?
So I think there's probably two things that I would say. The first one is, if you are raising your baby with your partner, you have to know that they're going to do things differently. And it is so hard in the beginning. You want it to be done your way. That's very common. Whether it's how you swaddle them, how you bathe them, how you feed them, even just what you play with them. And so I think it's really important, because we keep talking about friendships and relationships. And if you're going into it with a partner, maybe with the other parent, it's really important that that relationship is maintained. And one of the biggest early complaints within, let's say, marriages are that, you know, the dad all of a sudden didn't seem to be important, or the other partner didn't, and that everything had to be the way the mom wanted it. And so I would just say that also takes practice, because you will just at times just feel like, unless there's a real safety issue, but you'll just feel like, no, 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 that's not how we do it, or that's not what time we do it, or that's not where we do that. And you do have to let some of that go. I would say that's the first piece. And the second piece is really to watch your mental health. There's upwards of, 50% of women that will feel what we just call the baby blues. And even though that might not be clinically diagnosable, it still is the blues. It's still sort of feeling down, and just feeling tearful and not knowing why, and feeling torn between loving your baby, but then also, maybe saying like, is this it? Is this what I was waiting for? Why don't I feel all the feels I thought I was going to have? And so, I think that we're working on destigmatizing some of that, but there's a lot of isolation in maybe not feeling all of these magical, wonderful feelings that you were promised you were going to feel, and then being very private about that. And then that's the baby blues. And then we have conservative estimates as to actual postpartum depression, but they're all over the place. I mean, it seems like a good fair estimate would probably be even anywhere between 10 to 20% of women that have babies will experience an actual postpartum depression. And that's something to be taken very seriously. And so I would encourage women, even if you feel like for whatever reason in your social support systems, you can't or don't feel comfortable talking to somebody, please talk to your doctor. Go to those follow-up visits. Tell them how you're feeling. It might be therapy you might need. Maybe it's even medication you might need. You might need to be told even what's happening and really process that through. So mental health is something that we know has a genetic component. We know has an environmental component. And so really being honest about where your mental health is will also help you attune to your child better. What is the probability? What is the likelihood that they may have, some of the even transgenerational trauma that we can pass on? A depressed mom holds her baby less, looks at her babies in the eyes less. And those things have an impact. And so it's not to be shamed around it. It's to be educated around it, and then work, to be able to work on that. So those are probably the two things I would say.
That's wonderful. And I'm so glad that you brought that into the conversation, because it's such an important and just a real part of the journey and the process that there should not be stigma about. Dr. Cheryl Ziegler and Latham Thomas, you two are goddesses. This has been such a wonderful and loving community driven and like supportive event. And it was such a joy to speak to you both, and to everyone joining this broadcast. We're so grateful that you spent the time. I feel like it was like self-care, so I'm hoping you are as well. And please remember to check out marchofdimes.org for resources to help you through every stage of your pregnancy. Take care, everybody.
We're fortunate to have a partner like March of Dimes that shares our values and is working to address issues like environmental justice that affect the abilities of all families to have a healthy start. Because the health of people and the planet have always been in our core values. Our commitment to a happy, healthy world starts with Mother Earth and motherhood.
We at The Honest Company have always been huge supporters of anything that could help moms and children. And so we are so thrilled to partner with March of Dimes for this incredible event. And happy Mama's Day. Every day is Mama's Day. Don't forget that.
All right, here we go. I told you I'd be back for some chair stretching. Now, let's be honest. The last couple of years, we've all probably spent more time sitting than we have in a long time. Especially the way that the work world works now. A lot of us are working from home and we find ourselves sitting all the time. However, even though we're sitting all the time, it's a great opportunity to work in regular stretching. And so I'm going to show you a few of the best stretches you can do if you find yourself sitting for extra long times and you're not getting a lot of stand up and walk around breaks. But let's start from the tip of our heads and we'll go all the way down to our legs. That's how I always like to sort of do this. It helps me remember what stretches I'm doing first. So we're going to start with our head, particularly our neck. We're going to start by just looking down, hold, look up, hold, look down, hold, look up, hold. Come back to the center. We're going to just lean the head to the left. Don't force it, just let it fall naturally. As if you were trying to bring your ear to your shoulder. Back to center, to the right side. You're gonna feel a nice stretch on the outside of that neck. And then back to center. One more, left. Back to center, and right. Nice work. All right. Now let's just roll the shoulders a bit. We're gonna go backwards with this. Big circles are drawn with the shoulders. Now I know everyone's got different sized chairs and different heights of desks. I actually have a standing desk behind me, but I'll cycle between standing and sitting. Okay, now we're gonna start with the forward roll. And you're gonna find that you probably want to adjust your chair and your desk height to be ergonomically correct. I would recommend doing some research, going online and just seeing about how do you size yourself for a workstation. It's going to help the body be more functional, plus it's not going to feel as fatiguing when you have those long work sessions. It's amazing what happens when we're hunched over and we're in these awkward positions that aren't ergonomically correct for our body size. All right, so we just got the shoulders a little loosened. I'd like you to bring the arms out front. All you're going to do is open, close, open, close, open, close, open, close. Just keep doing it. 3 more, 2 more, 1 more. Now, bring the hands outside, same idea. Ooh, a little too close. I'm gonna lean a little bit. Just doing the same thing. You're gonna start to feel like your forearms are starting to feel a little bit pumped. And just because we're increasing the blood flow, we're also cycling some of that inflammation through our body, trying to just loosen things up. Well done. Now, if you're standing and taking a break, you could also put your hands behind you and do this. Let's bring the hands back down to our thighs. Nice comfortable position. We're gonna do some cat-cows, all right? We know these from yoga. So the cat and then the cow. The cow, we're gonna start by pushing everything out, cycling the back in. And then as you exhale, pulling it, try and envision yourself sucking your belly button into the spine. These stretches are really good for spinal health. We're gonna come back to center. We'll do one more. As you inhale, pull those shoulders back. If you like, you can look up to the sky or you can look down. It depends on what you're more comfortable with. I tend to just keep my head in a neutral position when I do this so I can just focus on the spine. And now we'll do the cat stretch. And I like to exhale as I'm doing that. Pulling that belly button in towards the spine and just sort of hold for a few seconds. Come back to that relaxed position. I'm going to show you one more right now. I know there's lots that you can do, and if you go on YouTube, chair yoga or chair stretches, you'll find a whole pile of them. And I always say, you know where you need it because that's where you typically feel it. Meaning that if you have certain areas in your body that gives you sort of pain, discomfort, or isn't feel like it's moving very well, that's usually the areas you better start on first. One area for me in particular are my hip flexors. And most of us that are sitting a lot have a shortening of these hip flexors, or what's called our psoas muscles. This like stretches from up here and it goes all the way down past our knee. But this muscle, if you do a lot of hiking, cycling, biking, swimming, these muscles get used a lot. And when we're sitting all the time, it shortens up a bit. So we find that this dysfunction carries over and starts to create other challenges for us, particularly maybe even with our knees tracking, lower back, or lumbar spine, especially our hips. So one of my favorites, the pigeon pose, right? We're all used to the pigeon pose from yoga. You're gonna take one leg up, just put the ankle or just slightly over the ankle, depends. I find sometimes if you're sensitive in the ankle joint, you wanna just move it so your ankle's just a little bit past. Sit upright, neutral position. Make sure the opposing leg, the opposite leg that's on the ground, is nice and flat. You don't wanna be slouching, okay? You wanna be flat and grounded. I like to put my hands here. And what we're gonna do is if you wanna add a little bit of spice, you can press down slightly as you lean forward. Otherwise, just let gravity do the work. Just gonna slowly lean forward. So as I'm feeling my upper body start to lean into this, that gravity and downward pressure, I can feel my joint opening up in my hip there. I also feel this in my glutes, all right? Your butt muscles on the outside. And if you're feeling it there, don't worry, it's working, all right? And you just sort of ease into that. And I like to hold this one. Sometimes I'll hold it for 2-3 minutes at a time. There's no really set time domain. I usually say do it for at least 5 to 6 good deep breaths, inhales and exhales. That's a good way to sort of count it. Sort of breathe into the stretch. This also causes a relaxation of our neurological loading in our body. Sometimes our minds are trying to protect our joints, so it locks us up. So when we actually inhale and exhale through this deep sort of repetitive pattern, it actually has this loosening and relaxation effect. So sometimes you'll find that actually the stress, the joint itself just releases. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's nice. Now I feel it. Anyways, lots of cool stuff you can do, all from a seated position. But the next best thing to doing your stretches from a seated position is just stand up. Set a timer on your watch or on your desktop computer to remind you to step up at least once every hour for at least 3 to 5 minutes and just give your body a nice shake, a good little stretch. Your body will feel so much better for it. Maybe even do a little meditation break. Other than that, thank you. Enjoy the rest of the program, and I'll see you for the nutrition tips shortly. Die out.
Hello to everyone who's listening today. I'm Johnny C. Taylor Jr., President and CEO of SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management. And today I'm here with a diverse and esteemed panel to talk about reimagining the workplace and putting moms first at work. After all, we're all here because of a mom, right? I'd like to start with each of our 3 panelists, introducing you to them. First, we have Dave Nichols. Dave is the head of state and local corporate and government relations for EMD Serrano, and David is a father of 2. And then we have Blessing Adesian, I love that, founder and CEO of Mother Honestly. Blessing is a mother of 4, and I'm really excited because she is not only here with us today, but she's here with us from Nigeria. Very, very cool. So we have a global panel as well. And then Amy Nelson, who's the founder and board member of The Riveter. Amy's a mother of 4, and this group collectively will be able to provide us so much information as we discuss a very important and critical part of our workforce. Here's a fact, though, that I think we should all let kind of settle in. We talk about what happened with a pandemic. As a result of the pandemic, there were some good and there were some not so good things. But here's a fact that most don't know. And we collect this data at the Society for Human Resource Management. We collect to constantly monitor how the workforce has changed. Pre-pandemic, for the first time ever, women made up in the United States a majority of the workforce. It was the first time that we'd ever done it. We have seen such progress, and companies and employers of all types were very, very intentional about making sure that we brought women into the workforce in meaningful numbers and that we promoted women so that they also grew and thrived in the workforce. And then all of a sudden the pandemic occurred. In the 1 year, February 2020 to February of 2021, the American workforce lost 2.3 million women. And that was in 1 year. And what we now know 2 years into this pandemic is that this is stubborn. They're not coming back. And we at places like SHRM, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Department of Labor, we're all trying to figure out what's going on. Why can't we get women back into the workplace? Well, I'll tell you, the biggest culprit is dependent care responsibilities. And we know this. One of that is being a mom, but we also know, because many of us in the sandwich generation, we're also taking care of elderly parents, right? Aging parents. So you have mom and child on both sides, and you're thrust in between. And for good or for bad, women overwhelmingly, Dave, you and I know this, overwhelmingly bear the responsibility of providing for children. And so we really do have to, and it's why this conversation is so timely, we've got to discuss how are moms being impacted by the pandemic, and what can we do to bring them back into the workforce? How can we create environments that are mom-friendly? So with that, my first question, I'm going to, shoot to Amy. Amy, what do you see as the greatest challenges and the greatest opportunity? So let's be fair here, challenges and opportunity for mothers in the workplace right now, post-pandemic. What are we up against?
I think the biggest challenges for mothers in the workplace are similar to what they were before the pandemic, but only exacerbated. There was a childcare shortage in America before the pandemic, and we have lost something like 30 to 40% of childcare providers in the past 2 years. So there's even fewer options for childcare than there were before the pandemic. So I think that is one of the biggest challenges. It's something that has always held women back in the workplace because, for better or worse, women remain the primary caretakers in families.
And affordable childcare, you might add, too, which complicates it even more.
Of course. My company is named The Riveter after Rosie the Riveter, which, is the iconic
That's right.
legend of the American woman who went to work during World War II. And at that point in time, America actually subsidized childcare because we needed women to go build ships and build tanks. And so we created childcare facilities and then subsidized private childcare facilities. And I think that's something that we could endeavor to do again, whether it's through the government or private companies. So I think that is really the biggest challenge. And I think a second challenge is, as companies decide to bring people back into the office, women who have relied on the flexibility of working in the home, if they're now back in the office, that creates challenges just in terms of logistics, again, with childcare, but then other logistics as well. I think some of the biggest opportunities, I think there are really a lot of opportunities. I think now is really a time where we could reset gender equity and the way we think about it in the workplace. One simple way to do that could be saying, we don't believe that women are the primary caretakers, and things we can do to reflect that are offer parental leave at companies and encourage both men and women to take that parental leave. Men need to be involved from day zero, and we need to show that in society for people to really embrace that. And that will have such long-lasting consequences of the way we look at gender in the workplace.
I got to tell you, Dave, that what a great way to segue to you, because as you and I being fathers here, you've doubled me. I have one little girl. You've got 2 children. React a little bit to what Amy said. Maybe it shouldn't be all thrust upon women. No, in fact, I would argue it shouldn't be. What do you think about that? How do you react to that? But also, I'd like to ask you to think about something else. It's clear that there's a full-on war for top talent out there. And a high percentage of the best professional candidates are working moms. Isn't that amazing? We're now saying that like the really, really strong candidates are women. Dave, you represent a leading fertility company. Can you tell us how you differentiate yourselves as a supportive employer to moms and working parents? And is there an ROI that makes this good for business? So, first, reacting to Amy's comments about maybe it shouldn't all be on the backs of women, but also then tell me about your business and what you all do there from an ROI perspective.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Johnny. And I think this is such a great forum. We're really excited to be part of this. When I listen to what Amy's saying and some of the statistics, Johnny, even that you talked about at the beginning here, I totally agree. I think it's not just women. We look at it as parents, right? And what a parents have to do to be able to be successful in the workplace and be successful at home. And a lot of that is for us is a cultural foundation, right? So we continue to invest as a company in our women in leadership programs. It's kind of an award-winning affinity group within the company that gives women and men who participate as well a platform to talk about some of those issues that allow women and men to kind of thrive within the company, but particularly focusing on those issues that are disproportionately affecting women. It also then goes beyond that to talk about the opportunities within our Leaders of Color employee network, within our Rainbow network. We have a whole host of kind of diversity, equity, and inclusion groups, and a company has to have that cultural foundation in order to allow all of those groups to be successful. And then you incorporate into that some of the issues that Amy's talking about with regard to some of the challenges that women have found in the workplace. And I think, as you mentioned, look, it's well documented that the pandemic disproportionately affected women, and they often shoulder, unfortunately, too much of the responsibility for caring for children, for caring for parents, for caring for kids with disabilities, and a company has to lead by example there. When we went into the pandemic, we launched global work policies that actively created an environment that was more flexible for people to be able to work, to be able to take care of some of these responsibilities. And these policies were in the works before the pandemic. I think we saw this shift happening before the pandemic, and the pandemic just accelerated. And it really brought it to the forefront where we had to do that. We had to communicate it actively. That's another important piece. As a company, we've got a platform to talk to 600, 700, 800 people all at once. And so that regular communication about finding what actually is going to work for employees, what works for teams, what works for managers is really important. The other thing I'd mention, you talked a little bit about the war for talent. And look, we're a biomedical company in Boston where there's hundreds of biomedical companies. And you can pretty much be blindfolded and wave your arm and hit another company that wants to attract the same employees that we've got. And so we look at not only how do we help and support employees that are managing their families, but how do we attract and support parents that want to have a family? As an infertility company, we're at the tip of the spear on that front with the patient advocacy groups. We offer comprehensive insurance coverage for couples that want to go through family building, that need coverage for infertility, because it's not uniformly covered in this country. We know that IVF is increasingly an important benefit. 68% of millennials take coverage of IVF into their decision making when they're thinking about where to go and work. And we hear stories about people that take part-time jobs at Starbucks in addition to their professional life so that they get coverage for infertility. And we're out there trying to actively promote, some of those coverage decisions. We've been successful in Colorado. Governor Polis signed a bill just this week, which provided insurance coverage for IVF, picks up about 750,000 people that didn't have coverage for IVF that will now have access to that coverage. So it's not just the employees that have a family, but also how do we support an environment that those employees that want to build their family. And that's a big part for us. So you kind of ended the question with a return on investment on business. I'm not sure we look at it that way. I think we look at it as a return on investment for our employees, a return on investment for the patients that are out there that need our therapies. And if we do those things right, then the return on investment for business just naturally follows along.
No, listen, Dave, I got to tell you, I'm glad you clarified that. But let me tell you, from the perspective of someone who's represents a profession who's charged with, I should say, finding talent for organizations in this war, we need you to do what you do. Here's a reality, and people don't think about this. The stats are almost unbelievable. Americans stopped having children in meaningful numbers in the year 2000. So the American birth rate has been on a steady decline now for 2 decades. And during the pandemic, it dropped by 4% in the year 2020, the American birth rate. So while, yes, we have to think of things necessarily as an ROI for business, in a knowledge-based economy, you need people. And frankly, we have fewer people in America right now and fewer people having children. And therefore, we have a real problem with replenishing our work supply, our worker supply. So Amy's shaking her head. She knows
Well,
this is
I feel like in America, we haven't grasped the concept that children are a public good.
Right.
And part of that public good is being able to grow and sustain our economic strength, which is not a bad thing to talk about, right? That's something that we want. And so, to treat children as a public good, you have to believe in their care, in their existence,
Yes.
and all of those things really matter. And I think that it's not all on private companies. It needs to be on the government as well, as you just mentioned Governor Polis. But there's so much more we could be doing.
That's right. Yeah, and anything that we do, any barriers we put in place to people having children, as Amy just alluded to, it hurts our country. Right. Ultimately, from a competitive standpoint, we have to ensure that we remove barriers to childcare, affordable childcare, et cetera. So that segues me to Blessing for a second. She's been sitting here patiently. Blessing, you run a large community that really, really digs into the impact of the caregiving crisis on women and families, while examining both short-term and long-term solutions to ease the burden on stressed out working parents. And we can't underscore, all of us now are talking about mental health, right? There are implications for parents who can't figure out how to provide childcare for their children.
Absolutely.
They can't bring their full selves to work. Let's talk about it, right? What are you hearing from mothers about what they are needing in a return to work policy? Yes, most companies have said we are returning to the workplace. And what are the obstacles in creating equitable offerings and solutions?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you. This is I'm nodding my head to everything Amy said, because we have been speaking to moms, whether it's Mother Honestly or the Riveter, we've been speaking to moms before the pandemic, and we know that before the pandemic, 93% of moms were burned out. So moms were already looking forward to leaving the workforce before the Great Resignation. I'm like, I don't know why this is news, because we were already burned out. We were stressed. We were exhausted. And quite frankly, we were literally raising our hands and no one was listening. And then COVID came along. And finally, everyone realized, wow, women have actually been doing too much. We've been doing too much at home. We've been doing too much in the workplace. And maybe it's time we reset everything and say, look, is there a way for not just women, but men to come together to figure out a way to work together at home and in the workplace? And that's really the premise for Mother Honestly, which is how do we get women and men to flourish at home? How do we build, successful homes? Because if you're not successful at home, there's no way you can be successful at work. And until we start having this equity discussion at home, it's going to be very hard to achieve that equity discussion at work, which is why one of the biggest things that we've talked about very recently is how do we get men to parent out loud in the workplace? Because until we make this, an issue for men, we've been talking to ourselves for too long. That's one of the things that we've started doing at Mother Honestly is, look, we need to stop talking to ourselves, which is why, I'm just very excited to see, a very diverse group here. It's not just, finally, I'm excited. I'm not just talking to other women. I'm talking to men. And so, how do we parent out loud? How do we make sure that it's okay for a dad to say, you know what? we really can't have this meeting at 4 p.m. because I have to go pick up my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we get men to do more laundry? Can we get a leader in the workplace to say, hey, have you done laundry this week?
I'm good. I can offer a class on how to fold clothes. I'm in.
Me too.
How do we get?
I grew up with a dad who did all the laundry and packed all the lunches because my mom worked too.
Thank you, Amy. Me too.
I love it. I love it. And I think that
it mattered.
We need to share the stories. We need to make it okay for us to share the stories in the workplace. Because, you know, what we've seen is that the workplace never did work for women in the first place. It wasn't designed for us. And we forced our way in. We went out there, got great degrees, you know, MBAs, PhDs. We worked hard. We even tried, you know, to act like men and be authoritative and do all those different things. And we found that none of it worked. And so I think the question we need to start asking ourselves is why? Why didn't it work? And I think one of the biggest reasons is because we've just always assumed, right, that women would continue to do this work, that we will continue to provide childcare, that we will continue to clean the house and wash the dishes and do all these different things. And so we need to start having conversations that goes both ways, not just for women, but also for men. Because I think women have sort of like reached across to sort of go from the home to the workplace, and men are yet to do the same. And I think that's why we keep having this imbalance. And so we need to start having these conversations with men. I think that's where we start, is parenting out loud in the workplace.
Well, Blessing, I got to tell you, and I'm sure Dave is nodding here, and he may even chime in here, but I love the diversity on the screen, this panel here together, because sometimes we do talk to each other about it's all women talking about women's issues, all men talking about men's issues, all blacks talking about black issues, and we all need to talk with each other. We need to expand the conversation so that we can be allies. We can be more empathetic in our approach. I can't pretend to be a woman, but what I can do is be more empathetic toward women in the workplace. But part of that is if you don't tell me, if you don't have a conversation with Dave and I and say, let me tell you what we're experiencing, like experience work through my lens, right? Then you can't expect us to do it. So David, I saw you getting ready to chime in there because I know this is you, right?
Right. Yeah, well, thank you. So, I mean, you also have to change the type of conversation that people have, right? I mean, we've got to get out of this 1950s mentality of job A is more important than job B. Right. I mean, the reality is job A and job B are equal, and it doesn't matter where it is in the organization, but you've got to get away from that conversation at home and to a certain extent in the workplace, that because a job pays more or a job is at a different level, that person has to be at work longer. It's not that way anymore. We don't see that in the diversity in our company, and every job is equal and is equally important. And that has to carry over into that conversation at home too. So you can get out of that trap of you've got to come home and take the kids because I've got to, staff a board meeting. And I think that's really important.
But I got to tell you, Amy, so I want to segue to you because I see you itching, but I also have a question for you. Moms are superheroes when it comes to pivoting. They've had to, by nature, you're talking about something that wasn't built. We men weren't built for this. I like to say that. And at the Riveter, you call it pivoting and riveting, which I love, right? As many of us are pivoting again, perhaps back into a formal workplace, what advice do you have for moms in transition? Because it's happening, right? There are companies every day announcing that they want their moms to come back to the workplace, maybe differently than they did in the past, maybe not Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, but they are coming back. What can employers do to help in this transition?
I think the best thing that employers can do to help with this transition is be flexible. I mean, I think what we learned, whether we believed it or not before the pandemic, and some people did and some people didn't, is that we can work remotely. And I understand the value of being in the office. I think that we will live in a hybrid world. But I do think that employers need to recognize that everyone's situation has changed and some people are able to perform better with more flexibility. There is no reason that we need to be at a desk from 9 to 5. We created the world when the internet did not exist. It does now. And so, we can be flexible with even our work hours. So I have 4 little girls who are 7, 6, 4, and 2. So I do 3 shifts really during the day. I work really early in the morning when they're asleep. Then I'm with them for breakfast. Then I have a big chunk of work while they're at school. Then I try to spend a couple hours with them. And then I do another shift in the evening. And for me, that works. right? And that flexibility allows me to get it done, to work really hard, and to be with my children. And so I think when we accept that flexibility can work, then, and we embrace it, then we're all in a better place. Some people want to be in the office every single day and they want to be there from 9 to 5, but other people want different scenarios. And I think it's okay that if we're working somewhat asynchronously, to just acknowledge that and embrace it.
Amy, you mentioned something that I must talk about just for a second here, is this idea in times past, sort of pre-pandemic, we referred to work-life balance. Well, I never believed in the concept. I don't know how you have balance in life on more than 1 or 2 days in a row, right? So we've begun to talk about here at SHRM work-life integration. And what you described, which was brilliant, I've put together 3 or 4 shifts, and so this is stage 1 of my day, this is stage 2, et cetera, for responding to the nuances of one child versus another child's needs, right? It is just brilliant. I've never heard anyone articulate it that. So for our audience, once again, can you just, Dave, I got a question coming for you, but I want to know, you said you call this 3 shifts or 4 shifts?
3 shifts. I do 3 shifts, and I do 2 shifts with my kids. And it's interesting because I really encourage companies to embrace systems like this where they can, and roles that they can, because I am a mother who walked with my feet. So I was a lawyer for a decade. And after I had my second daughter, I worked for a great company, but one that demanded I was at my desk from 8:30 to 5:30. And with a commute, I did not see my children because little kids sleep a lot. And so, I decided to create my own scenario, and this is what I built. And I built a company with this ethos. And before the pandemic, we had 120 employees. And kind of, I was somewhat flexible as a boss. I wish I'd been more flexible now that I understand what it means. But there was this, we didn't have meetings before 10 a.m. because people were dropping their kids off at school or whatnot. But just this idea that creating shifts, it works for people. And I think we all have online calendars, so you can tell people where you are and when you're available. And we can overcome this road bump to make that work.
Blessing, you were going to jump in. I saw you. Do you want to add anything to this whole concept of workplace and work, what we call, work-life integration?
I think somebody asked me this just yesterday, and I said, whether it's work-life balance, work-life harmony, work-life integration, I think the reality is that we just need a work-life plan. Everybody needs their own unique work-life plan, where that is, I'm going to be, working from home today, or I will be, working from the office.
I see your little one there. That's great.
And speaking of flexibility, right? He had a fever the entire week. And so just the ability to be home and be able to check on him and give him his medication and have him lay back down while I finish up my work, that's powerful. And I think that what I'm worried about as we go back into the office, Johnny, is that one, we are now going to have a much more wider shift between men and women, because men are going to go back to work and women are going to fight to keep working remotely. And so what's going to happen? Women will continue to do the larger share of the caregiving work. Women will continue to do the larger share of the domestic duties. Women will continue to lag behind mentally and in terms of their well-being behind men. And so I think that we really need to start thinking holistically about how we're going to make this return to the office work for women. And I'm not seeing enough conversation about this. And it's really, really scary for me because I have 4 kids. And I'm going to tell you the truth. I can't work if I don't have childcare. So work needs women, but women need childcare. So we need to figure it out.
I love it, Dave. Listen, Dave, that's the question for you then. How can employers best support this progress? We have made progress and we've lost some ground as a result of the pandemic on a lot of fronts, right? And what advice would you give employees to best advocate for a more supportive working environment for working parents? How can employees initiate the conversations? Because sometimes we sit around and we complain about something, but we don't do anything about it. The question for you is, how can employees initiate conversations with their employers around what is available for mothers in the workplace?
Yeah, and I'll make 3 points on that front, but maybe just to kind of react to some of what Blessing was just talking about, which I really agree. I mean, 2 years ago, we didn't know what Zoom was. We didn't know what Microsoft Teams was. People maybe had a camera built into their computer, but people didn't have external cameras or little glow rings or any of the other tools that allow us to do virtual conversations. And so companies are going to need to dive into that technology space in order to continue to find ways to build the affinity that's so important for any sort of group to work, right? You've got to be able to have that creative juice as well as that productive juice into the system. I mean, I think as our company's been as productive as ever because we're getting a lot of people contributing in a lot of different ways that didn't exist before, and we really didn't miss a beat as a result of the pandemic. But we've got to start to look at what the future is going to be so that we make sure we don't lose that creative juice that you get when you sit in a room together. I mean, I can remember being on conference calls where everybody else is in the room and you're the one guy on the star phone, and it's impossible to follow a conversation. A lot of that's gone away now, so it's much more open for people to be able to participate. We just have to make sure we don't lose some of that creativity and find tools to continue to drive that creativity. You know, I think about three things when I think about what employers can do in this area. You know, first, I think you got to have policies. You got to have a responsive culture that attracts and retains women, and really, frankly, all employees from an inclusive point. It's not enough just to have a policy on the books that says you're going to be inclusive. You got to lead, and I think EMD Serrano does that. We're out front working with advocacy groups to lead and drive change in the community that we already see working for us internally. Take a look at fertility benefits, for example. That's kind of the second point. We need to work to demystify the benefits. We've got to get away from being anxious about talking about sperm and eggs, right? And that's something that people just don't want to talk about. But when you talk about infertility benefits, that's got to be part of the conversation. And a lot of employees don't know how to have that conversation with their employer, or there was the stigma for women that if I go and I talk to my employer about fertility benefits, they're going to think that I want to get pregnant and have a family and that I'm going to be less productive, and that's going to limit my opportunity at the company. I think EMD Serrano's done away with that sort of culture, but that really exists. And I see that going state to state and talking about fertility coverage, that's still a challenge, and there's an opportunity for companies like EMD Serrano to be an example of how to have those conversations. And then finally, I would say that employees, kind of building on that, have to be comfortable with having those conversations, and they need the tools to know how to have those conversations about what their benefit design is. We know they're trying to look at it from a perspective of an employee that might be moving from company A to company B, and what are the benefits I'm moving into. But a lot of employees don't want to move. They want just benefits that are responsive to their needs. And so we work with groups like Resolve, which is the National Infertility Association, with groups like March of Dimes, to make sure that there are tools out there for kind of a coverage at work toolkit. So if you're an employee, you need a benefit change, you know how to have that conversation with your employer to kind of drive meaningful change. Chances are, if I feel that there needs to be a benefit change, there's 20 other people in the company that feel that way as well. And in having a culture where you are supportive of those sorts of conversations really leads to inclusive benefit design, which really helps tackle, some of the issues like infertility, which can be a difficult conversation.
So, David, you've mentioned something. I want to actually throw this out to the entire group, and then Blessing, I have a question for you that I'd like to follow up with. But you've used the word culture a lot. And as we all know, that was such a soft word historically. Like, one talked about culture, not serious business people. But it is the word, right? And one of the struggles that we have is so much of this has been about rules, has been so, you've got to do this, and equality. If I offer it to person A, then I have to offer it to person B. I literally have had a situation here at SHRM. We have 500 or so employees in our headquarters office, and I had an employee who said our office hours pre-pandemic were 8:30 to 5:30. I can't drop off my kid until 9 o'clock. That's just the available childcare offering that I have in my area, and it starts at 9 o'clock, which means I can't get here until 9:30. Well, we said, fine, you'll get here at 9:30, and you have to cut your lunch short or stay longer, because she's also got to leave early to pick the kid up by its closing hours. In any event, then we had another employee, not a man, but another woman, who said, well, wait a minute, we have to be treated equally here. So if she gets to come in at 9, I get to come in at 9. And we said, no, that's not the way it works. We are into equity. There's a big difference. We want equal opportunity, but we don't have to treat everyone equally, because in doing so, and that's that very subtle but important distinction between equality and equity. We want all to have equal opportunity, but we don't have to treat you equally. It doesn't make sense, as Amy pointed out, for you to have a meeting at 8:30 in the morning when you know it's going to disproportionately impact just one employee. Why do that? Why not move it till 10? So would you all react to this idea? You've got to build that into your culture where every employee, not just HR, not just a CEO, is saying to people, stop. All of your employees should say, why are we doing this to people and impacting even it's one employee in our workforce? This is a cultural thing. No, Amy, David?
I mean, I absolutely think so. And I think to make it something that's a cultural thing, you not only have to weave it into your company values, you have to live it, right?
Yes.
So there's the value, and then there's a tactical piece of it as well. And that could be, you know, as a team coming up with group meeting times 3 times a week that work for everyone, which I would argue also make you a more efficient company, because then you don't overmeet, which is what we all do. So if you limit the amount of meeting time, you can't overmeet. But I think it's really important because, you know, there is a sense, right? Like, we know that working mothers have had a really hard time, but that doesn't mean that women without children should have to take on more of a burden, right? And so you need that idea of equity, which is that we don't all start at the same place, but we all want to arrive at the same place. Beautiful. And so how do we make that happen? And I think it's a mix of values and then tactics.
That's right. Blessing? You're the expert.
I mean, we have employees now, and you know, we work asynchronously, and it's all about, you know, a target. You know, everyone has a target, and as long as we're meeting those targets, you know, we pretty much don't care how and when you get your job done. But at the same time, like Amy said, we have days where we have meetings and everyone has agreed to those times. And so we've committed to being there. And so in my mind, and the way that I think as we come out of this COVID sort of workforce into this post-COVID world, can we start to think about how to make the workplace work in a way that allows everyone to live their best life, right? So whether that is a work plan for a team, right? It doesn't have to be the entire SHRM team, right? It could just be, oh, you know, the tech team are only going to be working, you know, 2 days in the office and 3 days from home. And that's because it works for them, because maybe they're doing their sprints during the times that they are not in the office. I'm just making it up. Right. And so I think we are now at a point where everything needs to sort of be customized to the employee in a way that allows that employee to thrive. And so that's where the idea of an individual work-life plan comes in, or a team work-life plan, where we've all agreed that we are not going to have meetings on Fridays, and that's okay. So that means that, you know, that single mom and that, you know, man, right? There's no argument about equity at this point. We've all agreed that we're not having meetings on Fridays. So I think it really comes back to the company, right? If we have a family-friendly culture, or if we have a family-friendly policy that allows teams and managers to sort of dictate or sort of come up with the rules of their operation, I think we're probably going to fare much more better, because Google cannot come out and say, whoa, 50,000 or 100,000 employees, you all are now working from home on Fridays. It probably won't make sense, right? But a section of Google could say, you know what, we're going to work from home Monday and Fridays and come to the office Tuesday to Thursdays. So I think, you know, back to Dave, I think this is where, for a company that probably cannot operate 100% remotely, which is what I push for, is if you can operate remotely, please do so. And if you can't, push it back to your managers, push it back to the directors, let them own it and say, you know what, we have come back with a teamwork plan for how we're going to operate for the next 6 months. It doesn't need to be set in stone. It doesn't need to be a forever plan. It is just, for now, this is how we're going to operate. And the team has already bought into this plan.
Yeah, we talk about flexibility and agility. Well, here it is, right? You want to be agile. This is the way you do it. David?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're a diverse company in sort of operations, right? So we have research and development facilities. We have people working in labs. We have people that are, you know, the essential of the essential that have to be on site. We kind of redefined that in the pandemic of everybody's essential, but there are some people that are in the manufacturing space within the company that have to be on site, and others that had more flexibility to work from home. And I think about how you've got to make it simple too. You've got to have a simple mentality and not overcomplicate it by putting all of the structure in place. I remember we went through this interesting exercise with masks, right? Every company was trying to figure out, how do we deal with masks? And, at the leadership team level, when we were talking about that, there initially the reaction is, well, people that have to be in the office every day, that work on the line, they're going to be working close to people and they have to have a mask on. But people that sit in an office, well, gee, maybe they can take their mask off. Well, you know who that was? It was like the senior leadership that got to take their mask off, and the hourly employees on the line that had to wear a mask. And so that idea was quickly discarded because of this idea to treat everybody and everybody's job the same. And so if you're the CEO and you're sitting in your own office by yourself, you still have to wear your mask because that's what the guy in the line's doing. So you create that environment of equity, but then we also have objective-based, settings, and teams and employees have their objectives, and they have the flexibility, I think, at EMD Serono to accomplish those in the manner that's fit for them to be able to accomplish that objective. And that now includes remote and includes a lot of other options to achieve the goal, regardless of how you do it. And there's no cookbook about how to do it.
So I'm going to be a little provocative here, not surprising, because I'm going to throw this out to you. So far, you've had softballs, but I'm going to tell you, I'm going to challenge us all to think about, and it was spurred on by David's comment about sort of how we treated people in offices when we were talking about masks versus how we treated people who worked in cubes or otherwise. Listen, here's one of the challenges, and we don't talk about it a lot. Somewhere between 48 to 52% of the workforce never had the luxury of working remotely during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And for that reason, flexibility is harder. We're sitting here, and I heard you, Blessing, make the comment that, if everyone can work remotely, well, you can't do that in retail. You can't do that in manufacturing. There are a lot of jobs, and we have to acknowledge it, most of the U.S. economy cannot afford for a fully remote workforce. This is really a luxury of people who are in what we call the knowledge economy, who are better educated, et cetera. And we know that doesn't reflect all of America. So one of the things I want us all to kind of just chip in a little bit on is, how can we incorporate this flexibility? Amy is a lawyer. She can build a business where her people can largely work remotely. But Walmart, with its 2.2 million employees in America, can't do that. So we do have to figure out how to do that. I thought about that during the pandemic when most of us were shutting our offices down. Those people were still going to work. Mm-hmm. And we wanted them at work because that's where we got our groceries. And many of us, that's where we got our medicine when our families were sick with COVID. They were at the Walgreens, the Walmart, et cetera. So talk about that a little bit, because we do have to factor that in.
I mean, I'm not an expert, but I can offer my opinions. Blessing, do you want to go? Blessing, do you want to go first?
I mean, I can go first. So my background is in chemical engineering. I was on the shop floor for 15 years. So okay. I completely understand, that there are some professions like mine where you have to be boots on ground, hard hat, safety glasses, all of those things. And so you can ask those people to work from home. But then what can you do to support that employee? I think that's where we need to start thinking about policy and, whether it's employer policies or policies, within our society. Can we provide childcare for that employee so that he or she can actually bring their full self to work, right? So we're talking about reimagining the workplace. And so, what is it about childcare that makes it so hard for us to solve? I think that's where I'm always like, why is this a big deal? Because that's the single most important reason why a lot of employees, whether they're working remotely or in person, cannot work. So I think the biggest issue, the biggest problem that employers can solve for employees today is childcare. But back to you, Jenny, a lot of employers do not want to solve the childcare issue because, quote unquote, not everybody have kids. And I call, I don't want to say the word here because it really doesn't make any sense. And so when we look at, so looking at that from that lens, right? What are the things? What are the low-hanging fruits? The first one is childcare. The second is paid parental leave, and making sure that men also take their paid leave.
Yes.
And the third is flexibility. Yes, that employee needs to come to the workplace. But what about if he or she needs to go pick up their kids at 4 p.m.?
That's right.
right? Can we look at things like job sharing and make sure that these employees have, have a backup plan at work so that if something happens, somebody else is able to pick up that shift.
Amy?
Well, I was just going to thread on to what Blessing was saying in terms of flexibility and being able to pick up your child if you need to. You can create shifts that work around school hours, right? Like our school hours, again, like we base this 9 to 5, like school is still based on the agrarian calendar, which most Americans are no longer farming and don't need their children to go work on the farm, but we still base our school schedule on that, which makes it really hard for parents. So not only creating shifts around working parents, but also then not changing shifts. In a lot of shift positions, schedules are constantly changed. Things are mixed up. It doesn't allow for any predictability, and that's impossible for parents. So allowing for consistent shifts, I think, is really important as well.
Dave?
Johnny, maybe just if I can jump in here too. I think we need to be careful that we don't assume that companies know how to do this, right? We talk about these things and it's really important. But then when it goes to an HR manager, you probably know this better than anyone, when it goes to an HR manager or it goes to a senior leadership team and they say, okay, we want to be more responsive. How do we do that? Then there's like crickets in the room because they don't know how to do it. We learned a valuable example in that area with a program we have called Embracing Carers. We're a healthcare company. We help patients, but we recognized that the people taking care of those patients are just as important as the patient themselves. And we know, and we've got documented evidence that show that caregiving is a huge issue in the workplace. It's not just childcare. It's care for someone that has to have an operation or an elderly parent, and you've got to, as a company, have policies in place that allow for that flexibility to be a caregiver and to be able to work. And we've created toolkits that are out there, and we work with groups like the Mass Business Roundtable to talk to other employers that all raise their hand and say, yeah, we know our employees have caregiving issues too, but we don't know what to do to put into place to respond to that. So, it's probably a natural extension of this call is to start to think about where the toolkits are and where the resources are for companies to be able to implement and use best practices to talk about some of the things we're mentioning here today.
Well, I can tell you, there's one place I know that's really good at this work, and it's called SHRM. I know I had to do it. But seriously, that's the business that we are in, is our job is to ensure that work works for all. And we do provide toolkits on our site, and it's not just for HR professionals, although that's the overwhelming majority of our members, but a lot of people who are running businesses, who are people managers, go to us to get resources for just that, because we do have, luckily, some real experience in removing barriers to ensuring that work works for all. So I have a final question, though, for all of you. It's clear that now more than ever, working parents need to feel seen, heard, and supported. All three, right? What gives you hope? Let's end on a really positive note. What gives you hope for progress for mothers in the workplace? And I'm going to start with David.
I think what gives me hope is looking at my twin daughters that are 17 and seeing how they embrace technology at school and knowing that kind of technology exposure they're getting now is going to help them be better positioned when they transition into the workplace. So I think technology is going to be a great equalizer, and this next generation of people coming into the workforce is probably even more adept than we are at utilizing that technology to be successful.
Blessing?
I think, moms give me hope. We've been resilient even before the pandemic, and we continue to be resilient. We've seen more moms coming back into the workforce, and those that are not coming back into the workforce, are starting businesses, or recreating, their lives, right? They're redefining their lives. And those in the workforce are also demanding a better quality of life, right? Gone are the days when, it's so hard for moms to go in and request for a breastfeeding room or, request for paid time off. So now, more moms have the tools and the resources to go out there and demand a better quality of life. So that gives me hope that at least we are now emboldened to talk more about this. And we also see a lot of men, right, as a result of the pandemic, now truly understand the pain of a working mother. And so it's all out in the open. And now it's not so hard to talk about those things. So that gives me hope.
And Amy, last word.
Last word, I mean, I think there are so many things that are hopeful. I think, on the corporate side, the pandemic pushed forward a conversation that I think would have taken another decade or 2 decades to really have about flexibility. And I think that benefits mothers. I think that we are seeing more women start and lead companies and more mothers start and lead companies, which will benefit mothers because lived experience, I think, helps us shape and craft policies that work for mothers. So I think both of those things are really, really exciting. I think, there's tons of opportunity. I think there are a lot of silver linings to this. And so I'm excited to see where we head.
Well, listen, thank you all. I tell you what makes me really excited about this and hopeful is that you've got 2 guys on here talking as well. The point that was raised in the beginning is you can't do this alone. You need allies. You need people who empathize. I can never be a woman, but I can sure as heck begin to understand it. So as women talk about this more, that's not just talking to women, they're talking with business leaders like me and David, and we can also be your champions in the workplace and make sure that this progress continues, into the future. So with that, we've reached the end of this session of It Starts With Mom Live. I'd like to first thank the March of Dimes for inviting me to be a part of this very, very important conversation. I frankly can't think of a whole bunch of things that are more important to talk about at this point. I'd like to thank Dave, Blessing, and Amy for an engaging, and I hope you all agree, thought-provoking discussion. And of course, we would not be here without our virtual audience, all of you out in sort of the world. Thank you for tuning in. I hope we've given you some valuable insights to take away. I wish you all a great day.
Great. Thank you.
Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow. But if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on.
Hello! It's me, Diamond Well again, and I've got some nutrition tips for you right now. In fact, you know what? It's the things that we do and do often that actually make up who we are. And so I'm going to share with you a morning ritual that's been absolutely instrumental with my own health, as well as the health of people that I've been able to connect and convince to start their days with this morning jumpstart. It's called the Morning Mojo, and it's going to involve lemons, a bit of cayenne pepper, as well as ginger. And I know you might be wondering, those 3 ingredients together with water? I don't know. Trust me, game changer. And just in case you're wondering, this is the first thing you put in your body as soon as you wake up, and it's gonna set your day up to be awesome because it's gonna rev your metabolism, it's gonna start the detoxification process, as well as it's gonna rehydrate you, along with a bunch of other stuff, which I'll get into in a minute. So you ready? Let me show you how to put this together. Alrighty. This stage is set. Make sure you got your ginger. If you don't have raw ginger in the root form, next best thing, we love minced ginger. Nice, quick, it speeds up the time. And I find that if you have to mince the ginger yourself, it might become one of those stumbling blocks for some people. So I just say get it pre-minced. Make sure you got your cayenne pepper handy. And if you don't have fresh lemons or you're not looking forward to squeezing a lemon, alternatively, organic lemon juice, preferably something that's not from concentrate. So it's straight up lemons that they've just squeezed and put in a bottle for you. So let's get started. You're gonna start by cutting that lemon. And if you like, even before you squeeze it into the water, you can sometimes put it into an empty jar. I like to put some water in ahead of time. So put in roughly that 8 to 12 ounces. We're going to take this lemon and we're going to squish it. So it's your first workout of the morning. Really going to work that grip strength. Woo. And the cool thing about lemons, great energy boost, gives you a lot of vitamin C. It's also really good for gut health as it aids in digestion, boosts immune function, balances pH. It's also just a natural detoxifier, so it's just awesome. So let me make sure I'm getting all of it in there. Perfect. Now that we've got the lemon in there, we want to next add in some ginger. So normally you would take a 1/4 inch of the ginger root itself, and that's the total amount that you would mince and put into the water. I'm going to use roughly about a teaspoon. It depends how I'm feeling. Sometimes I might put 2 teaspoons. You know, it's up to you. If you love ginger like I do, well, add a little bit extra. It reduces blood cholesterol levels. Also reduces pain upwards of 25%. So if you're someone that deals with a lot of muscle soreness, you might find that this actually helps relax that. It's also good for a healthy skin, hair, and nails. Now, I know not everyone is a fan of spicy stuff, but I'm going to implore you, learn to like it, at least in your morning mojo, because it's full of antioxidants. So we want to put a pinch in there. Now, if you're like me and you like a little bit more, maybe 2 pinches. Well, 3. Oh, come on, we'll do 4. Here's the crazy thing, all right? It's anti-inflammatory. And it's also found that those that eat chili peppers were 13% less likely to die of heart-related diseases than those who avoid spicy foods. Helps boost digestion, also revs the metabolism, and it eases pain and clears congestion. So we're gonna, and actually here, I'm gonna throw a little garnish in there. If you want to throw in a little lemon, it makes the glass look a little bit more appealing. You're gonna give this a really good shake. Oh yeah, I'm getting excited already. All right. Alrighty, here we go. We've got our morning mojo all mixed up. Make sure you shake, 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 shake. Take your cap off. I love mason jars, by the way. And take a nice big whiff. It smells so good. Really, the cayenne gives it a nice little kick. Oh man, I can just feel my body moving. Okay, so simple, right? 3 ingredients, a little bit of water. First thing in the morning, as soon as you get out of bed, make this your daily habit. Habits are interesting. It takes time to form them. People always ask me, how long does it take to form a habit, Dad? And I was like, as long as it takes. Because here's the thing. If you're consistent and diligent, you make this commitment to yourself because you're the only one that can make it to yourself. But if you make that commitment and you follow through day after day after day, trust me, one day you wake up and it's just a ritual. It's like breathing or brushing your teeth. It's just something that you do. And when you get to that place, it's pretty magical. You're going to feel great. Energy is going to be improved. But it's also a wonderful way to start the day because you acknowledge that you're giving yourself something healthy, nutritious, and vibrant. So with that, cheers. And I'll see you later.
Hi, everyone. I am Jill Prowse, and I am an author and a mother of 4. And I am so excited to be here today with 2 incredible women advocates, Karen Rowland and Brianne Bierman-Vogt. We are going to be talking about how to take care of ourselves and how to advocate for others to put moms first, especially in the world today in general, all moms. How can we raise everybody up? So I want to start with each of our panelists. Karen Rowland, she is an activist, a leadership consultant, an attorney, a speaker, an author, a photographer, and she currently serves as the Senior Director of Global Engagement at the Brene Brown Education and Research Group. Thanks for joining us, Karen.
Oh, I love being here. It's good to see you, Jill.
Thanks. And Brianne Bierman-Vogt, we just met, and I'm already super impressed by this bio resume. She's a full-time mom and a part-time journalist and a communications professional and volunteer advocate for mothers and babies. And early in her career, she served as a reporter and a producer and a digital editor at WEAU-TV in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Such a fantastic topic, something that's very near and dear to my heart. And all of this feels a little like getting a little back to normal and putting ourselves back out there and trying to just pick up the pieces where we can. So I want to start by just asking each of you, how do you define advocacy and why do you think it's important? Karen, let's start with you.
Yeah, my definition of advocacy and really activism, I sort of use them interchangeably. I recently wrote a book called The Lightmaker's Manifesto, and in my book, I use them interchangeably. And I feel like the term activism or advocacy can feel really big and loaded. I know that when I started writing my book, I felt that way. I thought I'm not qualified to do this because I'm not an activist, or I'm not an advocate, even though I'd done some activisty things in the past. But then I interviewed a lot of people in the book, and when I was picking who I wanted to interview, I realized that they weren't people who I had attributed the meaning of advocacy or activism as like putting yourself in danger, or getting tear gassed, or having police dogs set on you, right? Like those are sort of kind of the things we think about. So for me, I define it as being led by your values to purposeful action in the hope of making the world brighter for other people, which is really, really broad. And it really sort of encompasses all the different kinds of ways that people can advocate, and hopefully do so in a way that feels uplifting and fulfilling, and really sort of taps into the gifts that people have in order to make the world brighter. So mine's really, really sort of a broad definition.
How would you narrow that down or define that in your own way, Brienne?
I would say that the three types of advocacy that I think of are the peer-to-peer mentoring that I do with NICU moms and different moms in the community, advocating by emailing your lawmakers, or setting up a meeting with them at the Capitol to share your story. I think sharing your story is really such a big part of it. How I got involved with the March of Dimes was when my son was in the NICU for 8 months, and I saw, after he was born, 2 pounds 6 ounces, I saw how hard he had to work to meet basic milestones that came so easy for my firstborn son that was full term. And it just amazed me that, the 2.5 months that he spent after he was born early, what a difference that made and impacted his life, and how we can work to try and prevent those preterm births is really how I got started. And that's my mission today, to help both moms pre and postpartum, and babies fighting for their lives.
That's amazing. What an incredible story. And when I think of that, I think of how overwhelming that must have felt for you. And that takes us into this next question. Moms are overwhelmed right now. I feel like that is the understatement of the century. It seems hard to get our brains and our schedules around taking on anything else. So why should mothers take on advocacy, and how? Karen, do you want to start with that?
Yeah. So, I really am a firm believer that all of us, no matter what, moms or not, are sort of called to make, that's sort of I think it was Martin Luther King who said that's sort of our rent we pay for being on the planet, is sort of figuring out how we can help make the world better. Specifically with moms, I also feel like I know so many women, a lot like Brianne, myself included, we kind of get called to advocacy when we become parents, right? Like all of a sudden you start to be really, really aware of the things that affect our children. And all of a sudden things have an urgency around them that that may not have in the past. Of course, obviously you don't have to be a parent in order to get into advocacy, but there's something that I feel like switches on when we do that. And so I have found, and my research has found, that there is actually a way to do activism that will bring you joy, and that can actually help you tap into something that provides meaning and purpose in your life, both for your children and both for just the way that you move through the world. And so I would suggest that finding a way to sort of use your skills and what you love to do, and figuring out how to add purpose to your life, not only makes the world better, but it can make you a better person, make you a better parent. It can add that sort of reasons for when parenting gets tough, why you're doing it all, like what the purpose of it all is. So I find it as actually a way to bring joy to your life.
And what is your take on that, Brianne?
I have to agree. I love that, sharing your time and talents and realizing your purpose. I think so many moms experience that. So many of my friends that I know, when they became moms, whatever it might be, but really honed in on what, they felt like their purpose was, beyond their chosen career maybe. So it really was incredible to see and to learn from, different moms doing this work.
And I think it's so important too, because the overwhelm is so present and valid. And I think a lot of times we see women who are advocates and activists, and it seems like such a massive lift, right? And you're like, if I can't do that. But I have found, for me personally, in my life, I'm going through a season of chaos right now. But being able to advocate for other moms, it selfishly benefits me because it helps me feel a connection with other moms when I really need it right now. And it can be as simple as, a friend letting you know she's just like really stressed out and she could super use a night of childcare and she doesn't have the money for it. So you just like rally your other friends and be like, okay, guys, let's chip in. Let's, what can we do to help the moms? That's sort of my take on it right now. It's like, it could be the 5 minutes it takes you to text somebody to get something for someone. It doesn't have to be these massive things. Brianne, what have you experienced firsthand as a volunteer advocate for mothers and babies, and how has that enhanced your life or made you a better mother?
Yeah, I've always thought that it was incredibly important to pay it forward to families, that are navigating similar experiences that I've been through. And whether it was an opportunity to give back, I look to how my boys, 5 and 7, can help. I know sometimes you think like they can't even vacuum the floor, but how can they help with volunteering? But finding ways, whether it's through the March for Babies and helping with fundraising, sharing their story at Signature Chefs, sharing their story with lawmakers at the Capitol, or we organize a gift drive for families that are going through, that are in the NICU, and they love helping organize and wrap the presents and deliver them. And it's really given them a firsthand look that it's not so much the physical gifts, but the support for these families, that they know someone cares about them, thinking about them, they're not alone. It's a very isolating experience being in the NICU, and especially during COVID, I can't even imagine how isolating it is. So really, it's more about the support than the physical gift to help empower them to be the ones, that are making huge decisions for their children and, watching them in the hospital or what it might be. So that's been an extremely valuable lesson, I think, for my kiddos, that through advocacy and change, we can help families in rough seasons, because everybody, I think, in some time in their life experiences a rough season, and we want to be there and give a sense of community too, which I think is extremely lacking. That we, would be wonderful to have more of a sense of community for people to lean on.
Karen, you just wrote a book. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
It's called The Lightmakers Manifesto, and you interviewed activists around the world. What did you learn from them, and how do they find time for self-care and taking care of their families while also doing all this important work?
Yeah. It's so funny. The book came about because my publisher, or the organization that became my publisher, contacted me. So it wasn't like I had this muse inside of me trying to write this book. And they said, we want a book on the intersection of joy and activism. And I was like, yeah, sure, I can write that, feeling like there's no way that I could write this. So really the process of writing the book was me learning about it as well, right? Like I interviewed all of these people, and they all do it in different ways, and they were all different activists for different things. But one person specifically taught me something, or sort of shifted my idea of what activism and advocacy should look like. Then in a way that was a little bit depressing, but it's also really freeing. And she said this, it was Valerie Kaur, who is a civil rights activist, and she does a lot of stuff for immigration and anti-racism and all of this other stuff. And she said, the thing about activism and advocacy is we in our lifetimes are never going to get to the point where we're successful. Like we're never going to get to the point where all the racism is gone, all the environment is perfect. And she said, so the point of advocacy is not to get to that, but to make progress, right? It's sort of to take the baton from the people who came before us and then give it to the people who come after us and have as much longevity in between as we can. And that's part of the reason why self-care, why celebrating the small wins, why doing it in community, while really sort of being very mindful of the rhythm, of the ebb and flow of what advocacy can be, is really important, because you don't want to burn out, right? And you don't want, and you do have kids that you got to take care of, and you have a partner that you need to take care of, maybe, or you have friends and other people in your life that you need to take care of. And so that was something that I thought was really, really sort of freeing, is this sort of really, like, sometimes you're going to have to stop and take a breath to gather your energy to go back in. And sometimes you're going to be going, and get rid of any of the shame or guilt that you might be in whenever you're in any of those, that ebb or that flow. Just sort of be very mindful of it. Don't fight it, and kind of go with it as you do that sort of thing. I'm sure, Brianna, some of the things that you see in the NICU are going to be really heartbreaking, and sometimes you just need to stop and take a breath, right? And it's not just for the restorative part of it, but it's also for the proactive part of it. Like, stop to take that breath so that you can go in and do what you can the best way that you can. So that was probably the biggest learning that I had.
Yeah, Brianne, would you say that that's like a technique or a perspective that you're familiar with?
Yeah, I was going to say, I love that. I always see that in the NICU with parents that are overwhelmed when I meet with them, or in my peer-to-peer mentoring where I might be messaging with moms in a different state, that what they're going through, but they're so overwhelmed in the world, so overwhelmed with what they're experiencing. They're in this whole new medical world, and their child's in the ICU, and most people never expected that to happen. So it's just a whirlwind. And just talking to them, letting their voices be heard, giving them confidence to know, like, they can do this, because their initial, like, this is so overwhelming, and I don't know where to begin to like help my child, advocate for them, advocate for what I need to, and self-care and all those things. But I've seen that with parents, like, having the confidence to know, like, one day at a time, here's some, we're here to listen. We can help give ideas too. We've been through this, and how much that helps them really to go forward. And, and then they're the ones that are paying it forward to the next family. And I think that giving a voice to the voiceless is such a powerful thing. And so that's what I try to teach my boys too, as, best that I can, a challenging thing, but to really look out for those who, aren't able to speak for themselves, and to, I guess, share what you believe in and share your stories to help move that baton, I would say.
I love that idea, and it's not novel, but paying it forward. And I think that we have to recognize that in this situation, there are the moms that are overwhelmed, and there are the moms that are in that moment where they have the energy and the breath to step to the plate. And you're probably going to take turns being those one or the other. And I think there's so much power in recognizing that when you are the mom who's overwhelmed and exhausted, and you can't help or advocate, maybe you're the one who needs the help. And there's so much power in encouraging those moms to ask for the help that they need and not feel guilty about it, knowing that they're going to pay it forward. It's going to be fine. Like, I have definitely been in a place very recently where I had to ask for help, and it was a hard pill to swallow. But I'll tell you what, on the other end of that, I'm like, okay, let's go. Let's save all the moms.
But I think the thing that has really sort of shifted for me as well is, we tend to think like, oh, if you're feeling rough, then tap out if you need to. But I also think that we should be proactive. Like, maybe we should front load, right?
Yes.
When it comes to like front load the self-care, get yourself where you feel like good in your own skin and ready to do it. And then as you're advocating, or as you're taking care of your kids, or as you're doing all of this other stuff, preferably doing it in a way that you love to do, using gifts and talents that you have. But as you're doing that, sort of being mindful, like, oh, you know what, I'm starting to get a little tired. And so before you ever get to the burnout, right, you front load again, right? And I think it's really sort of, I wish we would talk about self-care and self-compassion sort of in the proactive rather than the reactive. Oh my gosh, I'm really close to burnout, I need to take care of myself, like front loaded instead.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Okay, so Brianne, what have you found to be central to your practice of giving back? you have any tips for moms on how to incorporate that into their daily lives and into their families? I know you talked about doing this with your children. So just on a general sense, like, what are some tips that you share for them?
Yeah, there's so much. Yeah, I think it's just really incorporating in your life and with your times and your talents. So my background is in journalism. I enjoy, pitching news stories, writing anything I can help. Communication, I'd rather over communicate than under communicate. So I think that is part of it. And I think even through finding ways for my kiddos to help has got me so much more involved, because otherwise it feels like a time that I'm, away from them and taking on different things. But if I can find ways, which, whether it's doing a little gift drive, sharing their story, meeting with other moms who have similar experiences or similar diagnosis or different things that I can help support moms and include my kids in it, I just think they benefit so much from that. I think kids these days are caught up in so many different things, and kind of like getting back to your roots of what is important and how we're here to serve people the best that we can, and kind of always having that in our back of our head of how we can look for people versus like having our blinders on to focus on what we're doing. And it is challenging because there are a million things on people's plates currently, but if we can try to be on the lookout for how we can help people see that, and then I think that gets the ball rolling for advocacy or making change or finding ways to help others.
Karen, what would you add to that?
I think especially when you start to see and you start to really become aware of the ills in the world, I think the knee-jerk reaction is I've got to do something, and I'm just going to do something, and you just sort of cling on to what it is that you think that you're supposed to do. Like, I'm supposed to call my congressperson or my representative, or I'm supposed to knock on doors, or whatever. And it may be the thing that you're supposed to do is not something that particularly is fun for you, so you're not going to be able to sustain that, one. Or two, there's maybe a cause that is more important to you, and then there's other, because that's the other thing, right? Is like you have a cause, let's just say it's advocating for kids in the NICU, and then suddenly there's an environmental disaster, and then people are like, well, why don't you care about that? Like, why don't you care about that? So really sort of honing in on what it is you want to do, knowing that there are other people in the world that have different causes and that they will do that. And then I always say, like, it's a really good thing, rather than just dive in and say, this is what I'm going to do, is to stop and listen, right? Because there've probably been people doing the work better and with more experience than you have. And also being kind of loud about what you can bring to the table as far as a talent, right? So, for example, one of the things that I would have never thought of, I'm a photographer. I love photography. And I've been shooting for years. And a friend of mine who was on the board of the local Habitat for Humanity called me one day and said, hey, would you ever consider like coming and photographing the key service when people have built their houses and they get their keys? And so you can take photographs of the ceremony and then we can gift them, the day that they got their house. And I was like, absolutely. Now, had I considered doing something for Habitat for Humanity or homelessness or anything before? Not in a real deep way, but it was such a wonderful opportunity to use the thing that I love to do. I love photographing anyway. I love portraits. I love photojournalism in a way that was meaningful for the family. And it was because I had been loud about the fact that I really, really love photography. And other people can say, oh, if that's what you love, we can use that, right? We can use that. And what a win-win, right? Like the organization gets some help because they get free photography, right? I love it. So I got no problem with doing that. And then hopefully the people for whom they were advocating and I was advocating get something as well. So that's the other thing, is like really tap into what you love to do, kind of be loud about it on social media. I really love doing this and stuff like that. And then see what happens. A lot of times, the opportunity appears.
I think a lot of us have this idea that like advocacy should feel really heavy and hard. But obviously, like, Karen, the whole point of your book is like, you can find joy in it. There is joy in it. So it's okay if it's something that's makes you happy and you want to do it. That's great. Yeah. And I also think, like, you know, obviously the last couple months have been really hard news cycle wise. And I know my knee-jerk reaction is to try to take in as much information as I can, because I feel like I'm ignoring how awful things are. And I see a lot of people doing that. And just recently, when we talk about being proactive, taking care of ourselves, I know now that sets me up for this cycle of anxiety, obsession, and maybe I do get some people to do some things and it's a call to action and it's great, but it demolishes me. Yeah. And here's the thing, unfortunately, in my opinion, our world, there is not going to be a June or a July where we're like, oh, thank God we made it through that.
Everything's great now.
Right. This is just such an ultra marathon at this point. And there are so many people who are going to have broken hearts and broken spirits. And just like one of the best ways that you can show up for those people is to keep yourself from falling apart. Yeah. And when the time comes and you can jump out there and help them, then we will. But like, if scrolling through Twitter and mainlining news is not good for your mental health, then it's okay to not do that.
Yeah, I think that's right. I want to, if it's okay, I'd love to build on that as well. I had a woman in a talk I gave recently who asked the question when we were talking about that self-care and tapping out and how important it is sometimes to tap out from the news feed. She goes, sometimes when I tap out, I feel guilty that I have the privilege to tap out. And so is it really fair for me to do that when there's so much horrible stuff going on in the world? And which I thought was such a really interesting question. And, she was basically saying, how do I know if I'm tapping out, it's self-care? And how do I know when I'm tapping out, it's because I have the privilege to, and I just don't want to even face it anymore. It's a really beautiful question that hasn't come up with me very often. And what I would say to that is, if you are tapping out because you're like, it's not that I'm not coming back, but I want to get myself in the right space, right? The right mindset and everything else so that I can do it in an effective way, that's self-care and that's awesome, right? If you're doing it because, oh, I don't want to talk about it, why do we always have to make everything about race or politics or everything else? I'm not talking about it anymore. That may be resting on some privilege, right? And so really kind of being very clear about, it's not that I'm leaving, it's that I'm resting, right? And I'm listening into that rhythm before I go back in and do what I can to help.
Yeah. And my take on that is, truthfully, everything that you can do as self-care is coming from some place of privilege, right? If you have the time to take a nap, if you have the resources to access mental health doctors, etc. And the whole point of those privileges is to use those for good, I feel like.
That's the privilege, right?
You're not going to just like
helping people.
Exactly. You're not going to have a privilege-free life.
Yeah.
That's what we have. That's what we were given. But it's okay. How do I use this privilege? Well, what I can do is I can step back and I can collect myself and I can keep myself healthy. And then I can let people know I'm free to take photos at their charity event or to volunteer at the NICU or whatever else it needs to happen. What's your take on that, Brianne?
Yeah, I agree. Just being a part of somebody else's life and story, and then it just empowers you. I feel like anytime I go to an event or something where I'm able to help somebody, it just gives me more, like going to the March for Babies, and then I'm already gearing up for like the next year and what I can do and how I can get it to grow. And when you plan and when you have some planning behind it, then it feels more manageable too, that you have the feel empowered to do more and saw, this is a stepping stone for the next thing that maybe we can do. And then also have the time to plan so you can, mentally plan what you want to do. Yeah.
Well, we have talked a little bit about what the future may look like and how it could be overwhelming, but like we said earlier, sometimes a perspective change is really all that we need. And it's good to think about what gives us hope for the future. Karen, I would love to hear what's giving you hope these days.
Well, I'm the mom of an 18-year-old, and she's about to go off to college, and she's in the process. I think I mentioned to you that she's writing this thesis about the intersection of activism and graphic design, which is her thing, and all of these other kids. When I look at their theses, it's about how they can help, mental health stuff and how we can help the environment. And really, her generation is giving us hope. I love the idea of these 18-year-olds that are really thinking about how they can already give back. I know as an 18-year-old, I was not that switched on. And it's so really, really sort of exciting to see who's coming up.
Yeah, I agree, man. Thank goodness for these kids.
God bless them.
And Brianne, I mean, what about you? You have so much experience seeing babies come into the world. I mean, they are the actual definition of hope.
Yeah. So to share, 7 years ago, I had postpartum hemorrhaging and emergency surgery to save my life 2 weeks after the birth of my firstborn. And at the time, I never would have thought that this could happen to me as a healthy 30-year-old mom with a normal pregnancy, nor did I realize that so many other women I know have had similar experiences. And it was from sharing my story on social media with the March of Dimes that I discovered that all these different women that I have crossed paths with in my life had gone through this, and how common it is, and how scary it is, and how important it is to talk about this. I mean, mortality, morbidity, inequality, miscarriages, moms have an extremely heavy load to carry. And I think becoming an advocate for moms and babies can give a real purpose and hope for moms. In the NICU, where I volunteer, we created a wall of hope where my second son was a patient for 8 long months. And when I see the faces of these tiny fighters, babies grown up and holding their baby photos, it inspires me, I think, as much as it inspires current NICU families to see, the light and the future, and there's hope coming forward. And the saying, hope is seeing the light in spite of the darkness, is so true. I feel that the light is the community of advocates and the continuous work done by the March of Dimes at the Capitol and beyond to really move the ball forward and to have a brighter future for families, across the country.
Love that.
That's amazing.
I want to see the wall.
Yeah, that sounds incredible.
Yeah, and has the snacks with their little with their stories that they're NICU to now.
Yeah. Okay, well, are there any other points that y'all want to make? Anything that you want us to make sure that we takeaways? If you can just take one nugget of wisdom from this conversation away, what do you think that would be, Karen?
Well, one of the things that I always like to invite people to do who maybe have not stepped into advocacy before, I'm a big journaler, and journaling is a huge part of my own sort of introspection and how I can help change the world. And so if you're not a journaler, or if you are, one way that I think you can start thinking about how can I do this is ask yourself 3 questions every morning. And it doesn't even have to be pages long. Like literally, it could be 3 questions you ask when you do your to-do list. And the first one is, how can I feel connected today? Right? How can I connect with the people I love, with my family? The second question is, how can I be healthy today? Right? And all of these can be really simple questions. It could be, I'm going to send an email to my mother for connection. It could be, I'm going to drink extra water for healthy. I could take a disco nap. I'm going to hit the gym, whatever. It could be anything. And then the final one, and the one that's, I think, germane to what we've been talking about, is how can I feel purposeful today? What's one thing I can do today that will help add purpose? And it can be, it could be donating to a cause. It could be writing a letter. It could be helping out a friend, to what you said, like, how can I galvanize help for a friend? But if you do that for, let's just say 3 weeks, for 21 days, sometimes what your cause is going to be it emerges, and you start to see, this is really where I can do something that will help my family, help inspire my kids, and help add meaning and purpose to my life. So that would be one thing I would share.
I love that. What about you, Brianne?
I would say with the purpose is so huge. Finding what you're passionate about and finding your purpose, and often through advocacy and change, we find that sense of community, that sense of family. And, that's how I found my purpose, through my experiences and sharing my story. And that's how I got involved with the advocacy work. And I think it's just one step at a time. towards a goal. So that you don't feel overwhelmed, but you're just taking one step at a time towards a goal to improve the outcomes for moms and babies.
I love that. Yeah. And it's so true. I mean, I think what I would share is like, there's progress in inches. I came out of therapy with this statement, there's progress in inches. And it, speaking of the point, like, we're not going to see the end results probably, but like, if you can make those inches over your lifetime, that matters. And so nothing has to be massive. It could just be a lot of small little things throughout your entire life that will really add up.
Love that.
Thank you so much for joining me. This was such an amazing talk. And thanks to the March of Dimes for having us here today, hosting this incredible conversation. I hope everybody is leaving feeling inspired to just do a little something, and let that be enough and carry you through. Thanks so much for joining us. Y'all have a great day.
So Kelly, it was such a great conversation today. I think today was amazing. And I just want to say thank you for being a part of it. I thought it was fantastic.
It was awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I mean, all of the speakers, everything about it was just, I feel like I'm full of even more insight now. I'm grateful. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. We really hope that everyone got a lot out of this, that you got some helpful tips and information about pregnancy, about motherhood, about childbirth, all those questions that so many of us have asked in our lives as we've become mothers. We hope that this was really helpful to you. It's really, really important that we encourage moms to really speak up and ask questions and let your voices be heard. Sometimes we don't feel like our voices are listened to or heard or respected enough. And so it's really important that we make sure we are listening to moms. And when you have questions and you need help, we always hope that It Starts With Mom can be a great resource for you at itstartswithmom.org, or just going to marchofdimes.org. Hopefully you can find a ton of information and access to resources and everything you need through your journey through motherhood. So moving forward, I think one of the things I learned is that I need to take some time for myself. Because I need some self-care and some time. And even though my kids are a little older, it doesn't even matter. As a mom, just like all of us, we're all balancing so much. And it really is important. Kelly, you talked about this, to really take time for ourselves, that if we can't pour into ourselves, we can't give back to anybody else. So I think that's a really important thing that I learned. Kelly, what are you going to do to put yourself first today?
I'm going to maybe get a pedicure.
Ooh, nice.
Maybe get a pedicure. But what I was going to add to actually what you said is, I love how many questions there were. I think that as women, we should never be afraid of asking questions. And there's not one question that's not a great one. You know what I mean? Anything that seeks to have more knowledge is a great question. And that's it.
That's exactly.
So I just encourage us all to ask the questions. We want to all be full of knowledge, be full of wisdom, and spread it and pass it on, because that's what we should be as a community of moms.
I can remember being in mommy groups when my babies were first born, and I would be so afraid to ask a question, thinking it was a dumb question, but then I would get the guts to ask it. And then everyone would say, "Oh my God, I was wondering the same thing too." So, I was like, wow, okay, that works.
Yeah.
I'll just keep asking those questions, right? But to your point, we have to all prioritize our health and wellness, and taking time for ourselves, taking care of ourselves, our own well-being is really, really important. And so, and if we don't do that, we all can experience burnout, all can experience mental health issues. And that's something that, especially again, since we're not completely out of this pandemic, we have to always be worried about making sure that we don't burn ourselves out with so much worry and concern for everyone else, and that we spend a little time thinking about ourselves. We all have kind of a new normal that is different from what it was before, I think.
Absolutely. And I think that it's like, some of that we want to embrace, and some of it we're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is the new normal.
Yeah.
And in that moment, you just kind of, I know a friend of mine was like, you got to roll with it. You got to roll with it. And we're women. She's like, we figure it out as we go. I said, you're right. We figure it out as we go.
Kelly, one of the things that I've always been so impressed with you is that how you seem to handle so many things with so much grace and kindness. Where do you find that ability? How do you do that so well?
One, I'm still learning because sometimes, there are moments where I could just want to like say sometimes how like it could feel stressful, you know what I mean? Because I've definitely been in that space where I literally scream to tell myself just be quiet and calm down. To just meditating, praying, and I keep thinking of the fact that I represent so many voices. So I always want to lead with grace. And I am always grateful. And I always think about how I would want someone to treat me.
Yes.
Yeah, I think about that a lot. But what I will say is I think Rihanna said it best where she said, never let them see you sweat. And that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself, yes. But at the same time, when you like succumb to so much of it, it's just like you have a choice in that moment. You're like, I'm going to figure it out and keep it moving. Or sometimes you do need a meltdown. You know what I mean? And I've had plenty of those in my closet or outside where I've been like, and sometimes you have to get that out too, because sometimes it is like you have to release it. It doesn't need to stay inside because that can become toxic. So you figure it out as you go. I'm figuring it out as I go. And I also, like I said, I give myself grace because I know I'm going to make some mistakes. But yeah, I try to handle it with ease.
Yeah. So that's one person we could have asked to join us is Rihanna on her motherhood journey. We have to remember that next time. Maybe next year we can have her. She'll be a new mom and we'll be able to talk to her about her journey.
I know. She's just glowing. She looks so
beautiful.
beautiful.
My gosh. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yes.
Well, listen, thanks for joining today. It's been great to be with you and spend time. And, let's just all remember that, while we put everybody else first, that sometimes we have to be first ourselves. And just remember that it all starts with mom.
It all starts with mom.